with KB and Andy.
Come on, let's wake up.
Gotta wake up.
Are you sure you want to wake up to this?
Come on now, wake up.
I can't wait to wake up.
Wake up, idiot!
Andy, if my memory is correct, it was just before All-Star break, and we were very grateful to have Adrian Wojnarowski join the show. The ESPN czar, the ultimate newsbreaker. We were very fortunate to play a extremely small role in the emceeing of his event at the Vogue back during All-Star week, and we saw him in the flesh. I believe his Woj bomb that day was related to like Danilo Gallinari.
It was Gallinari, who we end up seeing later on in the postseason against the Bucks. Yeah, forgot all about that.
But when we had him on the show back, 3-4 months ago, he had dropped quite the bomb that day, and we were like the first people to talk with him. I was like, damn, this is wild. That day it was the Warriors contacting the Lakers, right, to see if LeBron, or was it vice versa? I'm trying to think here. Was it the Lakers contacting the Warriors to see if Steph Curry was available?
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, okay. I think that was it. Right.
So it was quite the news cycle for us and basking in it. We won't have Woj on the show today, but will you fill our audience in on the Woj bomb?
Yeah, you may have heard it there.
Ago.
ESPN was talking about it 7 minutes ago. The Los Angeles Lakers are preparing a massive long-term offer to bring Connecticut's Dan Hurley to the NBA, with talks expected to escalate in the coming days. I guess there's thoughts he's going to go visit L.A. Remember, Kentucky, at least Kentucky, but I know Kentucky, Mitch Barnhart, they gave him a massive, massive offer to go be the head coach at Kentucky, and he stiff-armed them pretty damn fast, KB. And he said the thing, money isn't blah, blah, blah. And just yesterday, I was making all my jokes about J.J. Redick. Well, of course we knew that J.J. Redick was going to be the next head coach there. That's why I started the podcast with LeBron James and everything else. So, Dan Hurley, if you're Hurley, you can go to the Lakers. If it doesn't work out in the NBA, so you can sure as hell go back to college basketball and get paid $8, $9, $10, $11 million. So there's no worry there. But that is, as we would say in the business, that's a Woj bomb before 7 a.m., Kevin.
No NBA history, right, for Hurley, unless I'm missing something?
No, not that I know of. I'm going to look that up on his Wikipedia, but I can't think of anything that stands out. No.
Woj added this. The Lakers have had preliminary contact with Hurley, and sides are planning to escalate discussions in coming days. He has been at the forefront of the Lakers search. I'm sure J.J. Redick would love to know that. From the beginning of the process, while the organization has done its due diligence, interviewing other candidates, Rob Pelinka and Jenny Buss are eager to formally discuss their vision with Hurley of marrying his dominant program, built upon both his tactical acumen and elite player development. You got to love the agent.
I do like that. It's good.
To the storied Lakers brand. Obviously, it's the elephant in the room in college basketball and college athletics in general right now of there is a whole lot more on your plate than there was 5 years ago. And Hurley, I think, has been public about that. I remember the kind of funny picture he had of, 36 hours after the national title victory for them over Purdue. There he is lying in his office on the ground and saying, this is what the portal is like. I mean, just like has no idea, how to kind of get back into it and handle his roster for the upcoming season. I remember feeling this way when Urban Meyer went to the Jags, and even when Billy Donovan went to the Bulls. I do think and again, Donovan and Urban haven't sniffed. Obviously, Urban didn't come close to. He sniffed, but, he was sniffing, I think, the opposite sex more than anything there in his tenure in Jacksonville. Billy Donovan, of course, hasn't come close to winning.
Her name was Cayman, Nebraska, wasn't it? Wasn't that her name? It was something like that.
We know her name?
Yeah. The Urban Meyer. Remember the girl that he was grinding up against?
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I should act like society never fails us when it comes to
her
listening.
IG followers went from nobody.
Her?
Hang on.
Do you follow her like you followed what's her name
yesterday?
yesterday?
I think I do. Hang on. Her name's Cayman, Nebraska. I follow her still.
Gosh,
yeah, she's now a realtor in Columbus.
Do you want to publicly admit that?
And she's been vegetarian since 1996.
Well, I guess it's done the body some good. If you look at where things were at for Donovan leaving Florida, of course, and Urban, leaving Ohio State, they were on some sort of Mount Rushmore-ish for the greatest college coaches in their respective
Without a
sports.
doubt. Yeah, without a doubt.
And so if you're able to do it then at the pro level, you're then known as one of the greatest coaches, period, regardless of, whatever, college, pro, and just and is that appeal for Hurley? Is it an appeal to Coach LeBron? And insert your jokes about LeBron and Bronny here and how long that would be. But the timing of it and just the out of left field nature, quite the Woj bomb to start this Thursday morning.
I mean, listen, they're different jobs. I mean, I always say this, they're different jobs. If you are in college basketball and you're a coach that has success in college basketball, I lived this with two coaches, with John Calipari and Rick Pitino. You become an emperor of that town. You really do. You know that in the Notre Dame days, right? Maybe not recently.
Well. I mean,
Bloomington,
yeah.
sure. I mean, and people know that, not only with Bobby Knight, but especially Bobby Knight. You become an emperor of the town. And then, I understand the college game is difficult and NIL has, you could say, confused things, but you do get to choose your players in college basketball. In the NBA, you go to the NBA, you go to the NFL. If you're Urban Meyer, you don't. So, to me, there's a few things. The jobs are very different. How you acquire players and or keep players is very different. And then there's the entire LeBron factor. I mean, what are the Lakers going to do there? And then on top of it, so many coaches have had, success, I should say, with LeBron James, but it is short-lived. It burns bright. Isn't that the best way to probably say it, KB? It burns bright, and then you're the fall guy, if you will. Me and Corbin are in here listening to ESPN, their final segment, and they're making kind of the point of, this is a non-LeBron move to go get Hurley, and I don't buy that unless you're thinking you're not going to keep him around. And like I said a few minutes ago, Hurley's in the spot to where he can make this jump. If it doesn't work, he can jump back. I'm not sure he would go at every NBA job. If the Chicago Bulls or the Washington Wizards came open, I don't think he would do that. I think it's special because it could be the final couple years with LeBron, and I think it's special because obviously it's the Los Angeles Lakers. It is. I mean, do you view it as being too bad for the college game?
Yeah.
I mean, Hurley is the top dog right now.
Yeah, I mean, hell, if you want to go with Jay Wright or you want to go with other coaches we have seen, I mean, I don't know if Jim Harbaugh necessarily is the best example because he got the taste and got pretty close to it in the NFL, and I think it was always kind of a foregone conclusion he would want that at some point. So I don't think Harbaugh necessarily applies here, but I do think there is certainly an element that this is a state of where college athletics are and the difficulty and the navigating waters that you clearly have, and also the Laker brand, the LeBron brand. Part of me does think it was Hurley too crazy to coach in the NBA.
Well, listen,
that's a lot for 82 games.
John Calipari tried to sell himself to the Lakers and a bunch of teams when he had things going at Kentucky. And I always sat there and laughed because
Cal's not. I mean,
Cal's a crazy man on the sideline.
Yeah, but Hurley's even crazier. I feel like.
I would agree with that. I think Hurley is crazier, but the theatrics and the antics and everything that goes into it. I mean, NBA coaches sit over there and they don't go crazy. I mean, you get 3 times a year until you get to the postseason. That Rick Carlisle kind of went crazy, but night in, night out, it's about being even keel as a head coach in the NBA. And so many of the college guys are so emotional and are coaching every possession. You think of Calipari, or you think of Izzo, or you think of a Hurley, guys that have had their names or coached in the NBA. So
can you imagine
I'm excited, man.
Remember when he pushed one of his players to get into position on the floor during the Final Four?
I do
remember
imagine
him pushing LeBron.
Can you imagine? Bronny, of course,
hey,
because he'll be on the team.
Go over to the left wing here because we need to get better spacing.
Is Hurley good with drafting Bronny in the first round? Do the Lakers have a first-round draft pick?
Did he recruit Bronny? These are things I probably should. I don't know. Should I know or should I not?
I don't know.
No. Good Thursday morning to you. Nothing like saying that at 7:09. Apologies on that end. The very rare occurrence to where such a news item breaks right before the start of our show. I'm Kevin Bowen. He is Andy Sweeney. Corbin Lingenfelter in again for Mark Dykton. A fun show lined up for you today. Honestly, I would say the final guest, probably what I'm looking forward to the most, Sarah Meyer from the Sports Core, who has been a huge spearheader in getting the U.S. swim trials to Lucas Oil Stadium, the logistics, the maybe even the engineering and the plumbing behind all of this, questions that we can talk with Sarah about that. So I think one of the more unique events, frankly, the city of Indianapolis has ever held. And so looking forward to getting some more education on that end. And Andy, sure enough, we've got a lot to recap yesterday over at West 56th Street. And unfortunately, it is a little bit related to the medical attention to Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think that's where we start today? And again, we'll talk with Joel A. Erickson coming up at 9 o'clock this morning. Now, you were there, and I actually saw your tweet get, when you talked about the up and down day and then the, what's going on with the right shoulder of Anthony Richardson. I saw your tweet get quite the run on the internet last night. So you probably had a bunch of likes and a bunch of retweets on that, I would imagine. I went to get the final tally on your tweet last night. But, I mean, can you tell us what happened? Because I think anytime we have Anthony Richardson news and anytime, unfortunately, there is any injury news, and I don't know, and I'm kind of hesitant to even say that, but we had the rolling out of the back 2 days ago, and then we had him in and out of practice, and we saw a lot of Joe Flacco yesterday at minicamp there. So what happened? He was, I guess this is an arm issue. Not a surprise, a few months separated from that surgery that still in early June you would have some pain there. I know we have some sound. He talked about that just a couple weeks ago, did he not? How sometimes, I wake up and the arm can hurt a little bit, but I'm good. So what happened yesterday? What do you think as we sit here today, the final day that I know you'll be out there? And I think Shane Steichen talks this morning, right? If I'm not mistaken.
And Anthony Richardson. Both are scheduled to talk today. Unfortunately, just how schedules go, we didn't hear from them yesterday, so we couldn't get any update necessarily on that. But, I'll be honest, as we were walking out to practice, I thought to myself, will Richardson practice today? That would have been yesterday. Again, he, as you said, Andy, got his back stretched out. He did not miss any team reps yesterday. Tuesday. Did not miss any, even though he did get his back stretched out for a brief period. So, it's June 5th yesterday. You don't need to be necessarily participating if you're dealing with anything that is somewhat ailing. So I was curious about that. We walk out there, and ironically, Shane Steichen was actually speaking with Anthony Richardson right as we got out to practice. Not something you see every single day during stretching, but Richardson looked normal, dressed for practice, participated, throughout the individual period, all fine and dandy. Gets in the first 7-on-7 drill, and when that one gets over, it's one of those, he's starting to stretch that right arm a little bit. He's doing a little circular motion with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a lot of that, really, throughout the course of the 90 minutes on the field.
Uncomfortable, is that the term, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
And just, I haven't seen it to the magnitude that he did it yesterday. There were several times where various members of the medical staff would come over and take a look at him. It never got to the point where he was lying on the ground or, Ballard and Steichen are walking over to take a look at him or anything like that. He did participate, I would say, at about 50% of the normal workload that he has. But for the first time in our 4 spring viewings at the Colts, Joe Flacco took multiple starting periods from Anthony Richardson. So we'll see what he does today. If he does anything, just to remind people, the original plan heading into this spring program was there would be no restrictions. There would be nothing scaled back from a workload standpoint. If he woke up with pain, then they would obviously deal with that as needed. But that was not, this was not going to be one day on, one day off, that sort of thing. And again, by all accounts, yesterday was not that. He participated, and he did take some reps, but didn't take them all. So again, I would say about half of the normal workload. I would say probably the rustiest he has also looked when he did participate. Just in general, I thought the starting offense really struggled, whether it was, frankly, Flacco or him in there. So now the age-old question that people ask is, how worried are you? And I guess this can be a bigger topic around 7:30 or so, but it's medical attention on your star quarterback on back-to-back days for an admitted very growing 22-year-old still, when he hasn't been hit in 8 months. And the Colts right now, Andy, have probably about, let's call it 80 guys, 80 of their 90 guys participating in this minicamp. I would, and this is my assumption based off what I've watched the last 2 days, I'm going to guess Richardson is the only one I've seen get medical attention during practice each of the last 2 days.
Well, that was going to be my question.
Have been,
yeah,
whatever, a second string
right.
safety that
but
I haven't witnessed.
but not a starter. Yeah, not a key guy.
Not to that level. So this is the question that's going nowhere. And again, once he starts to get hit and the red jersey is off, it certainly is going nowhere. So we'll obviously get more into this throughout the show, but definitely not what you want to see. In an ideal world, he would be participating with all of the starting reps. Did it look like he needed to be, you need to have an ambulance on the field and, usher him to Methodist? No, of course not. Nothing along those lines. But still, when you have his track record and you have medical attention on back-to-back days, and it's the body part that he had shoulder surgery on, I mean, I'm not a medical doctor, but we know how injuries somewhere can lead to injuries otherwhere. Talk to Tyrese Halliburton about that. Talk to some other guys about how a back and a hamstring, all of that can coincide. So
the body's connected, KB.
Thank you.
That's what it is.
Thank you. That's
it's
one
all
of the
interconnected.
Very few things I learned about the body back in elementary
well,
school.
I think I think we feel the same on this, and we'll dive into this further in about 20 minutes. But to me, I don't want to underrate this story. I don't want to overrate this story. I don't want to sound the alarms, and go back to the rhetoric of Anthony Richardson's never going to stay healthy here in Indianapolis or any of that rhetoric. But I'm also not ignoring it and saying, well, it's June. It's early June, Andy. He'll get these few days in, and then, he'll go off for a month and a half, and he'll come back, and he'll be, even better, and it's not a big deal. And I also don't feel that way. So I'm very conflicted here because I think a lot of times in sports radio, we want one extreme or the other. And I'm kind of giving you milquetoast of, hey, I'm storing this away. It's not a nothing burger, but it doesn't also mean that he's going to miss, 7 or 8 games this year. I think Anthony Richardson is... This is a story with his health that is going to be with him his entire career. He is going to be one of those guys that's going to be dinged up. He's going to be one of those guys that is going to go into some weeks questionable. If he were a running back or another position that wasn't a quarterback, he'd probably be a guy that as the season goes would miss a lot of practice, right? You wouldn't see him out there until a Thursday or Friday to kind of save his body, but he's not. He's a quarterback, and then there's just so much, and I know you probably feel this way too, there's just so much relying on him. There's so much. And that gets me to my third point, which would be, now, I guess they didn't look great yesterday, but there's a reason that Joe Flacco and the Colts came to terms, and there's a reason that Joe Flacco probably could have went other places. I'm sure other teams would have been fine keeping Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is going to be a vital at some point this season, and you hope it's not very much. Joe Flacco, I believe, is going to play. I believe he's going to start in a game or games. And, the story of this season, if the Colts can make the playoffs, or hell, even if they don't make the playoffs, is going to involve, in my opinion, Joe Flacco somewhere along the line.
Again, we'll get more into this throughout the show. I'll just add this, Andy. I thought quite often yesterday about the phrase that I haven't said in a while, but I'll say a whole lot as we get closer to the start of the season when it comes to Richardson and running him. Limit, not eliminate. I think that needs to be top of mind, and I don't think it's close to top of mind for Shane Steichen.
I agree.
I'm with you. I'll be totally honest with you on that. And then the other thing, and again, this is way too medically for me to even really dive deep into, but the more that I've been around kind of professional athletes throughout, I guess, my professional career, these bodies are so crazily unique. And yes, that's a given, but Richardson is a specimen. I mean, he's 6'4" and 255. I mean, he said it earlier this week with McAfee. He was like, yeah, I've put on 5 pounds. Pat's like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, I didn't even try to. I'm just still growing. It's like, wait, the dude's 22 and he's still growing. I mean, he's 6'4", 255 and runs 4.5.
Yeah, I'm growing too. I'm getting width-wise.
Well, yeah, I put on 5 pounds. That was in Vegas,
I was in Detroit eating White Castle.
Sadly different on that end. So this is just I think we're going to be dealing with this.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
yep.
I will share with what my eyes saw. I guess I will share if you should be worried or not, and you can Decide if you want to be worried or not. Again, today's it. Today's the final practice of the spring period. We'll see what Richardson does, if anything. We'll hear from Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. That is scheduled. And then after this, Andy, nothing for a month and a half until training camp commences at Grand Park.
Just a quick reminder, join the fan on the Back Nine Golf Tournament. It's all presented by Franciscan Health. It's coming up July 18th. That is a Thursday. Rain or shine, this event's going on. This is actually, KB, if you remember, my first event with the radio station. I just kind of showed up. I ended up taking pictures with Indianapolis Colts cheerleaders. It was a very awkward photo, but that's how things started for me here at the fan. Again, it's coming up Thursday, July 18th. Enjoy an afternoon of golf, beer, food, more beer, tournament-style games, and more beer at Back Nine Golf and Entertainment with the whole fan crew. Now, Jake and Jimmy, they'll be broadcasting there from the Back Nine at noon. JMV at 3 o'clock. There's also going to be a silent auction during the event to benefit Franciscan Health Foundation. It's going to feature sports memorabilia, one-of-a-kind of experiences for attendees to bid on, and much more. Again, it's all coming up Thursday, July 18th. Tickets are on sale now, 1075thefan.com. Cannot wait for that. Let's take a break. On the other end, your morning check down will get you caught up on all the happenings last night, NBA Finals tonight. Plus, Michael Pittman spoke with the media. What did he say about his contract? We can dive into that as well. It's a Thursday. It's going to be, by the way, a beautiful Thursday here in Indianapolis. A good guy. We needed it after yesterday. It's a Thursday. It's the Fan, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and
on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Plenty more on what was witnessed yesterday, day 2 of Colts minicamp, as Anthony Richardson, for the first time that we have seen this spring, had easily his most limited work of the day. We'll share a Richardson clip from earlier this spring of him maybe hinting at this a hair. We'll do that coming up the other side, but certainly the news fairy struck right before the start of the show, Andy Sweeney. As you, I assume, will begin there for the morning checkdown.
Yeah, let's go ahead and start there. The breaking news this morning, it's a Woj bomb a little bit before 7 a.m., a little bit before we went on the air. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reporting the Lakers are targeting Connecticut's Dan Hurley to become the franchise's next coach. They're preparing a massive long-term contract offer to bring the back-to-back national championship winning coach to the NBA. And I always love these things because Woj gives you a bomb, and the Lakers wanting to control a little bit of media, perhaps on the day that what happens? The NBA Finals, Game 1 tonight, Celtics and Mavs, Boston favored by 6.5. And I don't mind saying it. I'll take those 6.5. Give me Dallas straight up tonight.
You like Dallas in this series?
I kind of do like Dallas in this series. Yeah, I don't.
Should we make a wager?
I mean, sure, I guess. I mean, I'm not like hot takey about it. I'm not super confident, but I don't know. I mean, if you're telling me they can win at least 2 games, I don't know. Kyrie Irving and Luka, they can go crazy. I don't know. We'll see. Jason Tatum has shrunk before when the biggest lights have come on. So, yeah, I'm taking the Mavs in 7. How does that sound?
Heard a really
Mavs in 7.
Interesting stat from Brian Windhorst on this series. I guess this is more the NBA as a whole. It is only the 3rd time since 2000 that the Eastern representative is the favorite in the NBA Finals. Miami in 2011 and 2013, the other 2 times. So we are not used to Boston being, or any team in the East, of course, being the favorite. But as been, if anyone following the series from a gambling standpoint for last week, the money's on Dallas. Everybody's betting Dallas. This line has shrunk more and more, the overall series line. Boston is still the favorite, but easily you look at any sort of gambling numbers, a lot of money on Dallas here as you get a little better odds there. By the way, Kyrie Irving, he's lost 10 straight games to his former team.
Has he really? Are they going to boo him tonight? Remember they booed him every time he touched the ball a couple years ago?
I think the boos will be like
you think Boston's forgot?
Right?
Well, say that again.
Is it 8:30 tonight?
It is 8:30 tonight on ABC.
Tip time's right. Game 2 will be Sunday at 8. All right, on the baseball front, hottest team in the league, in my opinion, the hottest team in baseball. Spencer Steer, the go-ahead homer in the 9th. The Reds beat the Rockies. The Cubs do win on a walk-off. Again, I don't know if it counts with it being the White Sox. Paul Skeens last night, that was quite the back and forth between him and Shohei Ohtani.
Did you see that?
Strikes out Ohtani on 3 fastballs in the first inning.
All over 100 miles per hour, baby.
And then Ohtani comes back in the 3rd, works the count full, and hits a 2-run homer. Pretty cool to see, certainly in a very established star in Ohtani and a bright young star in Skeens going back and forth at it there. Paul Skeens, 3 earned runs over 5 innings. He got the win. Pirates beat the Dodgers, 8 strikeouts and 1 walk. So, again, a very nice start to the season continuing for him.
Has anyone asked Skeens in 4 or 5 years when they trade him at the trade deadline because they can't pay for him by the Pirates to restock their farm system?
Garrett Cole
I'm
2.0,
kidding.
right?
I'm kidding. Let's do this as well. Colts yesterday. Obviously, Steichen will be this morning, as will Anthony Richardson. So we'll get a little bit more on that shoulder if there is any sort of injury, any sort of holdback with the shoulder injury. So we'll do that with Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen. I'm sure the guys in the afternoon will have that sound. We'll have it tomorrow morning. As for yesterday, Michael Pittman Jr., it's the first time he spoke, correct? Since he signed that big lucrative contract extension, and he talked about that contract and how he's not looking at all these other wide receivers getting big money as well.
For me, I just got to a place where I was comfortable. I felt like the structure was good, and we felt it was a good time to just do the deal. And I don't I don't look at other guys and kick myself. I don't really care that much because, like I said, I signed it, and even if guys are getting more, I think what I'm getting is a decent amount of money.
There's an element to the Pittman contract that he is a big fan of. I want to make sure we get to that at some point yesterday. I thought Pittman had another comment. We'll play this clip coming up that I think there's a genuine motivation level that Pittman shared yesterday that, is not there for every guy in this league. And I've said it since day one. There's no USC pretty boy in him. I don't think he falls anywhere close to the normal diva scale on the whiteout. He was also very complimentary of A.D. Mitchell, saying that, A.D. Mitchell playing in an NFL kind of centric offense with Steve Sarkisian at Texas, he's learned some things from A.D. So could be some other stuff we hit on a little bit later. Fever back to practice yesterday. If they can't win on Friday, oh boy.
The team's winless, aren't they?
The Mystics have yet to win a game. And Andy, the Mystics play tonight.
Oh,
so you're
no,
it's a back-to-back?
Yeah, this would be a horrific loss, right? I mean, there's no way to say it. It'd be a horrific loss. They cannot lose on Friday night.
I'm afraid the Fever are an underdog.
No, they're not.
They're not. Let me double check this.
Okay.
I looked it up yesterday, and they were a 1.5 underdog. Is that a hostile environment in the D.C. area against the Mystics?
Oh, my goodness.
I guess this is not. Where the Chicago Sky got harassed coming off the bus last night.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw Angel Reese was tweeting about it.
+1. Fever are a point underdog against the winless Mystics, who will be on a back-to-back when they play on Friday. For what it's worth, Caitlin Clark did say her ear still hurts a bit, but
I think she's going to be okay. I think
going
she'll
to
probably
give it
be okay.
a go. So
man.
Your Fever updates.
Well, hang on. The Fever are favored by a point.
No.
Or underdogs by a point. And
yeah.
Again, it wouldn't matter that much, the plus money, the +1, the -1. Corbin, I don't want to tell you how to live your life. This feels like a pay your rent special, does it not? And that's a dangerous thing to say for a bad sports radio gambler like myself.
This is me.
But that's how it feels.
This is me sitting down with Maddie and saying, I think we can pay for summer daycare right here.
Yeah, this is how you do it.
Right.
You pounce when, you take the house. It's like Ocean's 11, and that with Danny Ocean, and that one moment you take the house. That's what I feel like we all need to run to our sports apps on that. So, we'll see what happens there. Last thing for me, Indianapolis Indians winners last night, 11-6.
Not something we've said in a
over
while.
Columbus. No, we have not said that in a while. You are right. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, what did KB see out at Colts camp? Obviously, that Anthony Richardson injury. And what did AR say just a couple weeks ago about that shoulder? We'll let you know. We'll keep things going until 10 o'clock. It's the Wake Up Call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Your home for
All right, we'll get back into the news item of the morning, and certainly nationally, that would be the Lakers having what appears to be heavy pursuit of one Dan Hurley, not J.J. Redick, Dan Hurley, for their opening at head coach. That Woj bomb dropped just before the start of our show, so we'll certainly hit on that throughout this. But a lot of Colts news from yesterday, Andy, and the biggest item being, for the first time all spring, and again, this is not according to plan, Anthony Richardson had easily his most limited day of work. I would call it roughly right around about 50%. It might not even have been 50, but let's just call it right around 50% of his normal workload. For the first time in front of us, which yesterday was, again, our fourth spring viewing, it was Joe Flacco taking the starting reps in multiple periods. And again, the Colts were pretty adamant there would be no restrictions on Richardson this spring. He would throw on back-to-back days. There would not be anything scaled back. Now, if he did wake up with pain on a day, certainly they would take that into consideration. But again, that was not the original plan. And he did start throwing yesterday. Like, he did participate in the first, individual drills. But then once they got into team settings, it was very much off and on for Richardson. I wanted to play this clip, and this was from a couple of weeks ago. Anthony Richardson really speaking, I think it was for the first time since kind of getting on the field. Yeah, this was after the second OTA. So again, just to kind of update everybody on how it works. The Colts had 6 OTA sessions the 2 previous weeks. They have 3 minicamp practices this week. So this was after the second OTA. And I thought for the first time, Richardson explaining a little bit more of, I feel good, but I'm not all the way there.
Every day is different for me. Some days I feel amazing, then some days I wake up, I'm like, dang, my shoulder's a little achy. But, every day, I work whenever I finish rehab or I'm in the weight room lifting. It's like, okay, I'm back, because I remember a few months ago, I couldn't even lift my arm up. So it's like, every day I'm working, I'm back, in the meeting rooms, I'm back, in there lifting, pressing, doing whatever, I'm back. In my first practice, I guess you can necessarily say I felt like I was back, but, that was only the first one. So 1 under my belt, 2 under my belt now, just got to keep stacking them.
Yeah, that sound is from May 22nd, KB. You mentioned the different OTAs. May 22nd, so just a few weeks ago. I don't know, man. I think I said this to begin the show. I'm not underrating this story. I'm not going to lose my mind and overrate this story. I'm not going to sit here and, and slam on the table and say it's a terrible pick and Anthony Richardson, the proof is in the pudding that he's not going to be able to stay healthy. But it's not a nothing burger. And you go back-to-back days where, and I know you were out there, so you can even add to this, there's not a lot of starters. I know Michael Pittman Jr. obviously is because of that knee and banging knees a couple weeks ago. He's not out there, but it's not like there are a bunch of starters that are continuously being looked at by the staff. And you go to yesterday, and, I'm stretching out his back. Now, he didn't miss any reps, but, having his back kind of rolled out and that sort of thing. And you come back to, you come back yesterday, and now he's got the shoulder injury. And it feels like, and the Colts know this, that they're going to be managing this all off season, into training camp and into the season. And I just got to believe, don't you, that this is going to be a story that we are talking about, if not weekly. It feels like damn near close to weekly. That's just how it feels to me. I made the kind of equation earlier in the show that if Anthony Richardson played a different position, if he were a running back or even a wide receiver, he's a skill guy in the offense, he might have these weeks where he doesn't practice very much. Or can the Colts do that with a young quarterback where he's going to miss some practice and be ready to go on a Sunday? And that leads to another part of this conversation. I just think Joe Flacco, at some point, if this team makes the postseason, if they don't make the postseason, if they have a bad year, good year, somewhere in the middle, I think Joe Flacco's going to be a part of this. I mean, we saw Gardner Minshew, how much he had to play last year. Good God, you hope the same's not with Joe Flacco, but I'm expecting Joe Flacco to have to come in the middle of games and be ready to go if Anthony Richardson has an issue. I expect a couple games this season, probably at least, for Joe Flacco to be out there and to start at quarterback for the Colts. So I am probably on the line of it's a nothing burger, a 0, or sound the alarms, a 100. I got to be honest, I'm probably at like a 65% with this one. Is that too high? I'm good with that. Yeah. I'm trying not to be worried, but it's impossible with what happened last year and the last couple days combined, even with that sound just a couple weeks ago in May. And it just, he means so much to this team. Everything that we talk about with this team reaching the pinnacle of what they can be is with Anthony Richardson playing and developing. I mean, we need not forget that he is not fully developed, given that he played 15% of the snaps.
I think that's a key part. Like, he just frankly needs to.
He's got to play football at some point. Yeah.
Period. Again, this is one of the least experienced quarterbacks ever to walk into the NFL, certainly for a first-round pick. You consider the practice time he missed last year, obviously the game time he missed, all of that. So, I remember the conversation we had back earlier in the spring, Andy, of like, he's ahead of schedule. And I think I said something to you of like, I don't care. Like, I mean, and maybe that's Andrew Luck's scar tissue speaking, but it's like, ultimately, my checklist for the offseason was around this time period when you have the offense versus defense reps that he has, been a part of. I mean, he's taken 90-some% of them until yesterday, or I should say he's taken 100% until yesterday, at least in front of us. And then obviously training camp is going to matter a whole lot. And then, of course, what are you, about 3 months away from the start of the season? So, obviously those checklists rise in urgency and importance, et cetera, et cetera. But where I just don't, cross this off as, oh, yeah, that's, everybody gets checked out by the medical staff on a daily basis, I'll reiterate what I said earlier. The Colts have about 80-some guys practicing right now, and I can't recall a single player that had medical attention to him both days here to start this minicamp. And just to remind people, again, the schedule, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week. Richardson did not throw, by all accounts, over the weekend or even on Monday. So this is not something, Andy, where it's like he's thrown 5 out of 6 days or he's thrown 6 straight days. When he got on the field Tuesday to start minicamp, he had multiple days off before that. So it's not just this general wear and tear is starting to catch up with them, anything like that. And then, obviously, he's not getting hit this time of year. So that's where I think I first off am going to report what I see, but then when we get into the editorializing of exactly what happened, yeah, I mean, to me, you have to have some sort of concern on this. Now, the optimism or the glass half full would say it's a month and a half until training camp, so whatever. Does he sit for a week or two and he's good to go? Whenever
you think he's out there today?
I guess I would be surprised. I mean, again, and this is just based off past precedent. In the spring period, if guys are getting medical attention on multiple days in a row, and on the most recent day, he had 50% of the workload that he usually does, you probably don't throw him out there. And if you really want to get technical, they actually practiced like just after 11 o'clock this morning. So it's less than 24 hours since when he, didn't participate as much yesterday. So again, him and Shane Steichen, that's Anthony and Shane Steichen, both scheduled to meet the media today. We'll see exactly where we are at. But yeah, I mean, this is the age-old question that we're going to have with Richardson of just his health, his availability, all of those things. And again, there will be hold-your-breath moments when he actually starts to get hit during the season. This ain't it right now. I mean, technically, he got sacked yesterday. The sack was DeForest Buckner brushing up against him and the defense hooting and hollering like, it was a 3rd and 10 sack with 2 minutes to go in the AFC Championship game. So, yeah, it's a bummer because, again, the reps are so valuable. And obviously you don't want to see anybody deal with the injuries that he is. Tuesday, just to remind everybody, Andy brought up getting his back rolled out on one of those rolling pads. He did not miss any reps on Tuesday in the team period. Yesterday, stretching out his shoulder at various points throughout practice. that was the first time we had seen Joe Flacco quarterback the starting unit on multiple sessions throughout practice. And for what it's worth, man, Flacco, I mean, he is uncorking that thing. Anthony Gould, the fifth-round rookie out of Oregon State, ran down a couple of his deep balls yesterday. Gould did drop one of them, but, boy, Flacco can fling it.
Flacco's the opposite of Gardner Minshew in that respect.
Correct.
In a lot of ways. Like Minshew.
And then Sam Ehlinger starts throwing, and you're like, wow, he's really the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, Gardner Minshew was shifty. That's a nice way. He's not fast by any means.
Yeah.
But he was a tough guy. He took hits, but he was shifty, could kind of create something from nothing. But he was not going to throw the deep ball, which we talked a lot about when we had the conversation yesterday in this past season about Alec Pierce. So Flacco's looked all right then.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
Flacco's been okay because that dude can wing it, if nothing else.
I'll go back to what I said a little bit earlier of like, hey, the defense definitely won the day, but Flacco did find Gould deep a couple of times for some big plays. If you remove that, which, you can't totally remove it, the defense easily won the day. For what it's worth, the practice ended with a 2-minute drill. And again, this is the stuff you just like to see Richardson in. 2-minute situation. Shane's trying to hype it up of like, here we go. Offense, defense. You're trying to create some sort of a competitive atmosphere or more of a competitive atmosphere. And it's Sam Ehlinger quarterbacking the offense. It was like, well, you want Richardson in there. And, Ehlinger throws a pick to Nick Cross. And Nick Cross is probably the guy that is the lead guy to start next to Julian Blackmon right now at safety. So, again, those are some of the moments that you're just missing right now.
This is my read of the situation. I could be wrong. The average Colts fan, I think, is when you and others are tweeting out the stuff about Anthony Richardson, looked at, by trainers, the shoulder, the back, whatever it may be, I think Colts fans are consuming that at a very high level. And I think Colts fans are worried. Is the average Colt fan, how worried are they? I gave you at about 6.5.
Yeah, I would say they are pretty worried. Now, again, scar tissue with Andrew Luck, I think is real for a fan base, as it
should be.
Like, I'm not going to fault you for that.
It absolutely should be.
I try to not go there, and I'm a little nervous at times. I'm like, am I going there? Like, Kevin, separate yourself. Try to be numb to the Andrew Luck situation if you can. And, when we talk about these things, I want to provide as much context as possible around it, because a guy getting checked out by the medical staff can be a somewhat common occurrence. But that's why I wanted to mention to you, Andy, and to our listeners, of course, that seeing back-to-back days, albeit not, I don't want to act like the whole medical team is surrounding Anthony Richardson on a cart yesterday.
Right.
And he is, like, during Flacco's 2-minute drill late in practice, you had Richardson, like, coaching up the wideouts with his helmet on. Like, so it's not like they needed to rush him inside or anything like that. But, again, there were guys, unfortunately, Michael Tutsi, a name that I mentioned yesterday, the Warren Central product, he went down during a non-contact positional drill, and very unfortunate just to see him go down. So, again, there are guys that certainly have medical attention against them or, with them during practice. But unless I miss somebody, in the Tuesday, Wednesday that I've been out there, I can't recall a player having consecutive days of it. Again, over the course of a 90-minute practice, you've got 80 guys out there. Yeah, there's probably a half dozen that get looked at for various things. But yeah, I don't.
They're also not Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, they're
also not the quarterback. I expect today. I guess I'd be surprised if this is not the case when AR and Steichen speak with the media. I would imagine both of them probably downplay this. Downplay it. We're just looking at things. It's a maintenance day. A couple months ago, he couldn't lift his arm, and we go through that rhetoric. And then the other thing,
and you have a month and a half off. All of
we have
that,
a month and a half off. Yeah, you're not playing games until September, and I can understand all of that rhetoric. But again, AR is different. That you want him ready to go. It's camp time. You want him ready to go, given that he just has so very little experience in what happened last year and what happened in Florida, obviously. And then the other thing, just to throw this out here, Anthony Richardson is Chris Ballard's hope to a certain extent, right? I mean, he is. He is the hope of drafting him probably. If you talked about Ballard being on the hot seat, getting a guy like Anthony Richardson, and then you see him develop, that is how a general manager keeps his job, with drafting a quarterback and that quarterback, saving the franchise, becoming that difference maker, going through what, I know everyone goes, and we can do this next hour to C.J. Stroud and the Texans, but that is also a part of this is Anthony Richardson. If he can play and if he can play well and the Colts can go to the next level and, make the playoffs and win a damn playoff game, this is also his maturation is a huge deal for Chris Ballard and his future here in Indianapolis.
Oh, without question. I mean, you are largely tied to the quarterback of your era if you're any GM, and certainly he is, given how the nature of his tenure has unfolded and the lack of a, new commitment to a young quarterback until Richardson. I do want to make sure we hit on, probably on the other side, I thought Michael Pittman Jr. Had some really interesting comments in relation to the wide receiver market. And, a question I wanted to ask Pittman yesterday, have you seen these deals play out for some of these guys? And obviously Pittman's not Justin Jefferson, but you see some of these wide receivers sign new deals. Do you have regret?
Sure.
About not waiting longer? Pittman doesn't have any regrets, and there's a specific reason why, that he thinks he will still cash in quite well, not just with this contract. I want to make sure we hit on that here coming up in a bit. Again, guess why? Scott Agnes, 8:30. Joel A. Erickson from the Star, 9:30. Sarah Meyer, who has been a big spearheader of what's going to go on inside of Lucas Oil Stadium for the U.S. swim trials with the Sports Corps. She's going to join us at 9:45. Looking forward to hearing more about the pools inside of the Colts stadium.
Yeah, my question for her was going to be, it looks like just a lot of work. What they had to do to get that to happen just seems like a lot of manpower.
I'm like, there's so many smart people in this world that, like, I just don't know.
Yeah, how do you even come up with doing something like that? So we'll do that coming up later parts of the 9 o'clock hour. Like KB said, Michael Pittman met with the media yesterday. What did he say about his contract? We'll play that sound for you. We'll do it next here on this Thursday. It's the Wake Up Call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
If you're talking about
even though that Michael Pittman Jr. contract extension continues to kind of drop a bit in the average salary rankings among wideouts, he still is quite pleased with where he's at. And obviously, answer your joke about look at how much money he's making. But there's a specific reason contractually why he likes his deal compared to some of the others we've seen signed, even though the others might have bigger money values next to it. We'll explain why here coming up in a few. But quite the news item that dropped. Chalk one up for Adrian Wojnarowski over Shams Charania, if you're going to, keep tabs on that battle between the two major NBA newsbreakers this morning. And boy, this would have some shockwaves not only across the NBA, but certainly college basketball as well.
Yeah, Woj reporting this morning, Dan Hurley and the Lakers are doing a little bit more than flirting. It's expected to escalate in the coming days. And right now, the Lakers are zoned in on Connecticut's Dan Hurley, of course, back-to-back national championships. I would imagine Purdue fans are like, why couldn't he do this last year? Why couldn't we back everything up a year so we don't have to face Hurley and that Connecticut team and we can get ourselves a national championship? But nonetheless, and then I tweeted that out, it's about a full 24 hours ago. Shams tweeted out that the Lakers are zeroing in on J.J. Redick as the front runner to be their next head coach. He tweeted that out, and again, 23 hours or so later, Adrian Wojnarowski comes over the top. Is it one of those things where the Lakers, I always am fascinated by this, KB. Whenever anybody can keep a story quiet, I am fascinated how a story can stay quiet in today's day and age. To me, I'll give you another one. Did the WNBA, not to get into the entire Caitlin Clark fiasco, which I think has finally run its course on the national landscape? Well, for the most part, ESPN's not leading every show with it like they were.
Not after this news item, I guess.
No, but think about this. If I'd love to know this. The WNBA reached out to the teams and said, yo, chill, right? Just chill. That would become a story, right? Like a team would leak that out to an insider or somebody. And so I am viewing that as not happening. I am viewing it as the WNBA hasn't sent a memo, a league-wide memo out to everybody, whether it be Caitlin Clark or just in general, to chill.
But that Congress guy did, right?
Well, did you read that? Jim Banks.
I thought it was a headline from The Onion.
Did you read it? Did you read the whole thing?
Holding Caitlin Clark's hand crossing the street there. I mean, unbelievable.
For people that don't know, Congressman Jim Banks, who is the 3rd District, Republican from the 3rd, sent the WNBA a letter on Tuesday to ask the league how they're going to curb excessive physical targeting of specific players, namely Indiana Fever's Caitlin Clark. I did read it, and it's kind of like, was it the Billy Madison? We are all now dumber after reading such a thing. But I did love it at the end. He goes, what steps is the NBA taking to curb excessive physical targeting of specific players? Do you believe that the WNBA players repeatedly diminish their talents of the fellow players? Is that beneficial to the league's overall success? You got to go read it. It's all over Indy Star and everyone else has it. I'm sure our website
Congress
has it.
People for, right? Protecting our WNBA stars.
Oh, goodness.
Where was he during Tyrese Halliburton's fouling in the Knicks series?
Come on, Banks.
Getting mugged.
Yeah, come on, Banks.
What district are you in?
Help us out here, Banks. But I'm always more interested when today's day and age, a story can get either to the finish line or in this case, pretty close. It feels like, KB, to the finish line without being out there.
Vibes. A little bit of the Andrew Luck, how close that was, kept to the vest. And obviously, it eventually got there. Now, I hate to sift through language. I guess we aren't yet to the point where Woj is this is a done deal by any means. Again, the Lakers have had preliminary talks with Hurley. Sides are planning to escalate discussions in coming days. Hurley's been at the forefront of the Lakers search from the beginning. Blah, blah, blah. They love, what he's obviously built at UConn. They want to match that up with the Lakers' storied brand. So, it does seem like if we're running a 100-meter dash, we still got a little bit of ways to go here on this. But my first thought was just, I think it's another, semi-shot at where college athletics are. I don't want to deny that Dan Hurley would just take an NBA job, any NBA job. Obviously, the Lakers brand, potentially coaching LeBron, all of that appeal has got to be really real. There was part of me that was laughing at, watching Dan Hurley tell LeBron, get on the line and let's do some suicides here to start the first day of training camp practice. I can't think NBA coaches. I can't think of anyone, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that sniffs the constant demonstrative nature to sideline decorum that Danny Hurley brings. I mean, he is certified nuts.
Yeah, but think of him after games and during games. Remember, he got into it with my guys there on the front row during the St. John's game, during the Big East tournament.
He's getting into it every game.
He went, I don't know if it was Providence, but a couple different stops along the way. He's mouthing to fans.
I mean, that ain't
of opponents.
lasting in an 82-game NBA season.
No, it's a long season, brother.
Especially,
it's a 7-month season.
And more than just, I guess, sideline decorum. I don't want to act like he needs to go to cotillion here, but, how will his team react to that? How will his players react to that? There's still an element of he's largely coaching 19 to 20-year-olds that know what they're signing up for. The NBA lifestyle is different. I think people feel a little bit that way about Jim Harbaugh at times. Eventually he's going to wear you out. And, how much will that run its course in the NFL? It is times 10, I think, in an NBA atmosphere. Again, there's no NBA background for him from a coaching standpoint. I guess there is some appeal, and, I brought this up a little bit earlier, and I feel this way about when Billy Donovan made the jump and when Urban Meyer attempted to make that jump as well. If you are able to have success at the NBA level, and when I say that, I mean win a championship, you will go down as one of the greatest coaches, period. Sure. Obviously, Donovan hasn't come close to sniffing that. Urban, again, only was sniffing the grinding of women, which, shout out to him. Andy, I guess, follows her on Instagram, I believe you said earlier.
It was immediately, yeah. What was that, 3 years ago, whatever it was? I love how that was the thing that was used against Urban Meyer. Like you can't do that. He could lose 15 games in a row, but you can't do that. You mentioned, just quickly, we need to remember that not even 15 years ago, in 2010, Hurley took over Wagner and went 13-17. And then he turned Wagner around the year after. Then he went to Rhode Island. So it's Wagner, Rhode Island, and then he started that job in Connecticut in 2018.
Are there any NBA coaches that are even close? I mean,
I can't think of anyone who would have that resume. No.
Michael Malone is kind of fiery. I guess Tibbs has got a little. But we just watched Tibbs coach a 7-game series. It's not like
this.
It ain't Hurley.
No, Hurley. You could see Game 4. Let's just say the Lakers are playing here in Indianapolis. Game 4 of the season, okay? And a fan says something. The same fan that maybe said something to Pat Beverly back in the Milwaukee series about 1-2-3 Cancun, if you remember that entire fiasco. A fan says something. I could see Hurley, going after him. I could totally see that. Game 4, or around Halloween time, I could totally see Hurley, go crazy. Of course, that wouldn't be Game 4 Halloween. That'd be trade deadline. But you know what I mean. I could see him go crazy. Let me just say this. College-wise, it is a little bit of a bummer for me if you like college basketball. I could see you could take it as, hey, it's a bummer.
I think Dan Hurley's great for college basketball. Yeah, see, I think you need crazy personalities.
I view that as well. The flip side of that is, well, whoever UConn gets, especially now that it's June, whoever UConn gets, boy, I mean, it's going to be a much lesser coach. I mean, the flip side is if he does leave, the UConn, Indiana got any more NIL money? Notre Dame, Shrewsbury got any NIL money? I mean, their
Liam
roster,
McNeely, right? You committed to UConn, didn't you?
Boom, there you go. Their roster is now going to be up for grabs potentially.
Stir the Bloomington war chest.
And then, I'll say this: I agree with the premise that college sports is in an icky place, in a difficult place, in a however you could say it's a bad place. There's people that don't like
awkward, confusing.
Yeah, there's people that don't like where college athletics are. I'm not one of those, but I am understanding of those people, and a lot of the things that they have believed in for decades have now changed. Hurley's different for me because Harbaugh, you knew, was always going to do this, and Harbaugh had the NCAA on his ass for 2 years. Right? Michigan is going to feel the effects somewhere down the line still of some of the hardball stuff. Now, even that he's gone, you would imagine with the NCAA, wasn't Urban Meyer, it kind of thought it was getting stale there as well. UConn and Dan Hurley is not stale. He is very much at the top of the mountain, and is very much the best in the game, if you will. I think he probably, I view him as a Billy Donovan more so than maybe some of the ones that we have seen along the line. Like, I see him and Billy Donovan not only because they won back-to-back championships and then off to the association, but Billy Donovan was at the top, Hurley was at the top again. I always felt like the NCAA was chasing Jim Harbaugh out of the sport almost.
Boy, I'd love to get some truth serum in LeBron right now, and how he.
You think he likes it?
I don't.
You think they care? At some point here.
I mean, by all accounts, obviously LeBron and JJ Redick were extremely close, but I also think LeBron is has a high immense of respect of what Dan Hurley's done at UConn. Now, again, that transitioning to coach me in the NBA, boy, that is light years different than that. Again, we have not in the portal era to have a coach leave potentially in June, because that would start a 30-day window, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that starts a window of all the players on the roster being able to move this late into the offseason when, to your point, Andy, the NLI money and, you could be, whatever, lifting up couches in, Bloomington and Lawrence and Durham and Chapel Hill and all over Lexington to make sure you can scrounge up enough to find these UConn players new homes. But that could be another massive domino effect. And then, of course, how does that all play out? Let's say, let's play it out. Liam McNeely, a 5-star kid who was committed to IU, decommitted, now he's at UConn. If he goes to if he goes back to Bloomington, does all of a sudden, Mackenzie Ibaka or some IU guy think, hey, wait a minute, I didn't think that was going to happen. Can I get out?
Well, I mean, it's a last-second push also.
We could have a firestorm in the summer months.
It's a last-second push on who has saved roster spot or spots
and money
and money.
Yeah.
Like a lot of coaches will fill their roster and this will be their roster. Following Calipari for years, and he's already done this at Arkansas, he's got 9 guys. So, if Liam McNeely or somebody else were out there, he could go get them. I'm not sure. Where's IU at? They got to have a spot, don't they?
They do. Yeah.
So they have a spot. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but those guys are in a bad spot if you
would also
committed.
make a spot.
Oh, you sure? Absolutely.
Anthony Leal, you want to get the real estate job started a little bit more full-time?
68-11. 2 national championships and a Big East crown in 2 seasons.
It's the best modern run in college basketball.
It is.
I mean,
it is.
We don't need to rehash it. Purdue fans certainly probably don't want us to rehash it. Yeah, Ben points out here, Hurley was on with Jim Rome after the national title and basically said, yeah, I rub people the wrong way, and I can only coach kids for a few years before they have to get away from me. Again, NBA life, I know there's turnover, but that is a little different. Speaking of money, I thought this Michael Pittman Jr. quote was pretty interesting yesterday. And this is the first time Pittman has spoken with us since the market at wide receivers played out. He has talked about his own contract. He's already been there, done that. But the first time really of, okay, wow, you see the deals for Jefferson and Devontae Smith and, Nico Collins and all these guys reset the market. I think it's a fair question to ask. Do you have any regrets? And just to remind everybody, Pittman, 3 years, $70 million, 46 guaranteed. We don't need to weep over it.
No.
Obviously. But when you compare him to other wideouts, he is quickly dropping down that average list. This was Michael Pittman Jr. yesterday on his contract.
I'm trying to figure out a way to say this to not be ungrateful, because obviously I'm grateful for everything that I have, but I'm not motivated by money. That doesn't make me feel like I made it or like I got it. And I actually think that is the death of guys' careers when they get comfortable with stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously it's very nice to have, but it's not what motivates me when it comes to football.
Some might hear that and say, boy, the agent wrote that out for the client. I think that's damn genuine from Michael Pittman Jr. I think he is legitimately wired that way. Again, I've said it for years. I don't think he falls on the normal diva wideout sort of scale. Having said that, there is an aspect of Pittman Jr.'s contract that he likes that is different than what we're seeing with some of these other contracts play out, and that is the length of it. Again, Andy, it's just a 3-year extension, and he said it yesterday, after 2 years, he can go back to the Colts and say, hey, now, it's extension time for me. Whereas these other guys that are signing 4 and even 5-year extensions, they are tied up for longer. So that is the aspect to it that plays a little bit more into, obviously, Pittman views that as a positive for him. I'm curious if that was part of the negotiating, Andy, of if Pittman wanted to wait and sign his extension, the Colts could say, hey, we'll do 3 years. You can hit the open market earlier, but you need to do it now. You need to get it, we want to get this done before free agency starts. And that's how it ended up playing out. So, again, it's nothing to worry about, I think, in the present. But if Pittman believes that that's how it's going to play out, that means after 2025, so not this coming season, but next season, he's going to try and get another contract, a third contract.
He'd be 29. He'd be 29 years old if he waits to the end of his deal. He'd be 30 years old, ready to. You would imagine cash in on another contract that would be very lucrative.
So I bring that up
right?
to say, that falls into more of Anthony Richardson's rookie contract is starting to climb by that point. You obviously want to pay Richardson that second contract, so it's a good problem to have, but it's a problem that you must figure out how to address. And I think a lot of this stems back to our discussion leading into the draft. And as much as I was a fan of addressing consistent pass rushing, and they clearly tried to do that with Latu there, I also said to you, Andy, I think you might find the future number 1 wideout out of this draft, or that should be a goal, because I don't think it's a slam dunk that Michael Pittman Jr. is automatically this number 1 wideout at 32 years old playing with 25-year-old Anthony Richardson, or whatever the age difference would be. And that's why I do think if you hit on A.D. Mitchell, it can do wonders for you moving forward.
Now, you look at guys that are below Michael Pittman. Like, Pittman makes more than Terry McLaurin in Washington, Calvin Ridley, who just signed that deal with Tennessee, Stephon Diggs, who has the 1 year left in Houston, and then he's going to get a chance to cash in, and then T. Higgins. I would say that I don't know McLaurin's whole situation there in Washington. I got to be honest, I don't know. I actually like Pittman better than Terry McLaurin, so I'm going to move McLaurin aside. Diggs, though, you would imagine, even though he'll be 32, I could foresee him after this coming season signing a deal that would be more lucrative than Michael Pittman. I also could see that with T. Higgins, who is, of course, playing in Cincinnati this final year under the tag, and then is going to get, you would imagine, a deal. And again, you would imagine that deal would be a little bit higher than Michael Pittman. Pittman's 12th right now in the NFL. When you look at highest paid, like that total value of the contract, highest paid wide receivers, I think by the time, we get to this point next year, I think he'll be, 15, 16, something like that. This is, I don't know. I view this as, this worked out pretty well for Ballard, this deal, I think. I mean, they got the 3-year extension. He grows up, if you will, with Anthony Richardson. But if AR blows up and is this great talent and you have to pay him, good God, whatever money in 2-3 years that we're paying quarterbacks in the NFL, then, maybe you do move on from Michael Pittman and you're moving on from a guy who would be 30 years old. I don't know. I mean, tell me. To me, it's it's probably a great contract for both, but it is a better contract, I think, for the Colts than Pittman.
I would agree with that, but I guess I thought it was interesting to hear from Pittman's side of it, the why on their end. Why did they want to get it done? Because again, I think I said this to you around that time that we were debating Pittman's contract and off the franchise tag and all of that. If you're in the Pittman camp, there was an element of you want to wait to sign the extension. And then by mid-July, I think is the deadline for that, because you want to see these guys set the market. And again, I'm not acting like Pittman would even sniff Justin Jefferson money, but just based off how market value works with a lot of these, pro contracts, you probably could tack on a couple more million to his deal.
Why didn't they wait?
Because he wants to hit the open market earlier. And I think that is the give and take of the negotiations that you get into with this. It's, hell, it's kind of business 101, I guess. Okay. What are you sacrificing? Okay. You're sacrificing that. Okay. That means that, you've got to give up this. And, this is a totally different topic and it's not very time sensitive. We can probably get into it a little bit more even next week. But like Ryan Kelly yesterday, as the NFLPA rep, he fielded a ton of questions about A, the 18-game schedule and the potential for that, or B, changing up this offseason schedule to where the Colts, or I should say where NFL players wouldn't have a spring period. They would just leave when the season ends and come back July 1 and then ramp it up into training camp and get ready for the season after that. Well, if I'm the players, if you tell owners, hey, we want this offseason program to look differently, that is not the bargaining chip that if I'm repping the players, I want to dangle out there, because the owners will say, oh, sure, you want that? Well, we want an 18th game. Deal? Deal. Like, I mean, that's, and again, I know the negotiation is not that easy, but that's where I think, again, that's a different topic we don't have to get into today because we do have so many other newsy items to hit on, but that would be one, like, I'm a little hesitant if I'm the player. So, to go back to the Pittman thing, Andy, I think it was the Colts saying, all right, we would like to get a deal done now. Pittman's camp saying, okay, if you want that, we want a 3-year deal with the thought that after 2 years, if our client continues to go on this linear line, that we want an extension done. And, of course, we'll cross that bridge when it comes, but I think that's a little bit of a, hey, what was your, big angle? What was your big angle to getting this deal done when they did?
I mean, you're looking at Pittman. He's probably going to have 100 catches, 5 touchdowns, and over 1,000 yards, over 1,100, 1,200.
More than 5 touchdowns, but I know that's kind of been his MO.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that's the case. Again, he's got 15 over 4 years. He's going to outplay that contract. We're going to feel that way, right? With Michael Pittman?
You would hope.
In that contract extension? Like, that's how I feel. I feel it's a great deal for the Colts.
Now, the number 2 wideout has done, well, I shouldn't say number 2. I mean, Josh Downs is ultimately the number 2, but, Alec Pierce done very little. Does A.D. Mitchell eat into more of that? Does Jelani Woods emerge? Last year, Jonathan Taylor didn't play for X amount of the season. Does he eat away at some of those numbers, Pittman related? So.
Yeah, and what should be, like, my expectation is if Richardson doesn't play in a game or a few games, Joe Flacco proved with Amari Cooper and company in Cleveland he can throw for 315 yards in these games. Like, to me, it felt like with Minshew, it was going to be pulling teeth, especially anything that was medium or down the field.
Your passing offense should not be as hamstrung as it was when you went to Minshew.
Right. Those numbers should not dip as much. In other words, if Flacco is playing, the excuse that he can't get the ball down the field like Minshew for a guy like A.D. Mitchell, but especially a guy we've talked about with Alec Pierce, I just don't think that's the case. Let me play one more for you, if you don't mind, before we get to a check down. Here was Pittman yesterday praising A.D. Mitchell. I like some of this stuff we heard yesterday.
It just elevates competition, like not only in those guys, but it elevates it like in me, Josh, because you bring in A.D., I mean, he's very like talented. Everything that he does is so like natural, and I feel like he brings something extra that we didn't have before, and I'm learning stuff from him that like I didn't really think about before, like just like the way that he moves and the way he sets up moves. So I think he's really elevating everybody while learning from all the vets too.
I just love all the rhetoric we're hearing about A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah, Jim Bob Cooter said something similar yesterday about just Steve Sarkisian being such an NFL, having that NFL background that, A.D. Mitchell comes in and is used to kind of some of the route concepts that the Colts are implementing. So, arrow certainly pointing up on A.D. Mitchell exiting here out of the spring. More on that. Joel Erickson coming up at 9. Scott Agnes, certainly a lot. Pacers fever to get to, but even nationally with this Dan Hurley news on the other side. And again, Sarah Meyer from the Indiana Sports Corps, educate us more on the pools inside of Lucas Oil Stadium, the logistics behind that. Looking forward to that coming up at 9:45. Before all of that, let's check it down.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, Even though we talked a lot about it there, I'll lead off your morning check down with the news of the morning. A Woj bomb a little bit before 7 a.m. Dan Hurley, the head coach, at least for now, of UConn basketball, being courted by the LA Lakers. The expectation, it's going to be a lucrative deal. It's going to be a long-term deal. And the thought is that the Lakers trying to, and will they be able to lure Dan Hurley away from Connecticut and away from college basketball? Again, 68-11, couple Big East crowns, couple national championships. That's just the last 2 years with Dan Hurley, a guy that if he does get this job, in 2010 was at Wagner, then went to Rhode Island, and then in 18 he got the job at Connecticut, and now 6 years later we could be looking at him taking over the Los Angeles Lakers. So that's the news of the morning. The Lakers want Dan Hurley from Connecticut.
Do you know how crazy he is?
Hey, listen, you got to get somebody, right? And you got to hit a home run. I mean, here's what I love about this.
But is it a home run? I mean,
I think so. The Lakers don't want to go retread.
You think his style works in the NBA?
Boy, we're getting ready to find out, aren't we? No, I'm not sold that it does. Yeah, I'm not sold that it does. But I sure as hell want to. I'm not a Laker fan. I want to see it happen.
Yeah, I selfishly.
Right? I mean, selfishly, I just want to see it happen.
For college basketball, I'd rather him stay there. I think college basketball needs him more than the NBA needs him. Speaking of the NBA, finals start tonight. Boston, 6-point favorite in game one. That line has shrunk, overall series line. I think a lot of money coming in on Dallas. Again, the first time since 2018 we've had all-NBA first-teamers in the finals. That kind of surprised me. Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic. So that is an 8:30 tip from Boston. Should be quite the atmosphere and quite the series for that one.
You mentioned Ryan Kelly. Let me just play one of these sounds. And again, this is something next week we can even get to. It's going to be pretty evergreen. The fight for the 18th game. Ryan Kelly, of course, with the Colts, NFLPA Players Rep. He made a lot of news yesterday. I know our friend Stephen Holder from ESPN, we had him on yesterday. He wrote about this. So this made its way around social media. 18 games. Here's what Ryan Kelly had to say, the NFL pushing for that 18th game.
If people understood how hard it was to play 16, then they took another one, right? And it's like, they get rid of preseason games. Well, okay, well, who's that going to hurt, right? The guys that don't have a shot, the guys that are the undrafted guys or late-round guys that need to go out there and improve themselves, right? It's not, and I think that, the fans see it as like they don't watch the preseason games. Well, they have no idea what goes on inside the building, right? So, 18 games sounds great when Roger's saying it on Pat McAfee podcast, but until, you're the one going out there and putting the helmet on for 18 of those games, then come talk to me.
Appreciated the candor from Ryan Kelly yesterday.
It's going to happen,
big guy. Throw in a
guy.
caveat of, is that revenue going to be a 70-30 split towards the players? Then maybe 18 games sounds a little different. Again, probably good summer chatter for us on that. And the final minicamp practice of the year for the Colts today. We've talked a lot about Anthony Richardson and his limited work yesterday. We'll make sure to rehash that coming up here in a bit. All right, a couple other items. Reds are unbelievable at baseball. They're back. Cubs won on a walk-off. Paul Skeens, solid outing. Him and Shohei Ohtani, great back and forth.
And the Cardinals even won yesterday.
Night.
Everybody won yesterday.
And Road America coming up for IndyCar. That is Sunday afternoon. And the Fever are an underdog as they get back to action tomorrow night. The Mystics are winless. They are on a back-to-back, and yet they're still favored by one over the Fever.
Oh, pay your rent on that one, Corbin. Save all this sound for Mark on Monday. We'll take a break. Scott Agnes, Pacer Talk, Fever Talk. We'll do it next on this Thursday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
As a roofer, spring means the
Boy, it certainly was quite the news item that we woke up to. Really, less than 10 minutes before our show started. That was Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that the Lakers are not zeroing in on one J.J. Redick. No. They're targeting Dan Hurley to become the franchise's next coach, preparing a massive long-term contract offer to bring the back-to-back national champion coach to Hollywood. Certainly would send some shockwaves across the basketball world. And I guess we'll start there with our next guest, Scott Agnes from Fieldhouse Files. Scott, you didn't need any coffee this morning reading that one. Your thoughts on the potential of Dan Hurley to the NBA?
Yeah, you sure didn't. A lot of text messages as I rolled over this morning to take a look at what I had missed over the last few hours overnight. I like the thought, the creativeness, the outside the box thinking. The only thing I'm unsure of is the current situation because of the Lakers, right? Like, they're not exactly in like experimental mode. They need a proven winter to maximize the last couple of years with LeBron. That's the only hesitation I have. Otherwise, I absolutely love it.
Scott, what about the craziness of Dan Hurley? I tend to agree with you, but he is a crazy man.
He is, but he also seems like his players love him and he's beloved based on, how he's you see them on the court with him after the games, and we saw on the bus as he did interviews during March Madness. So there is a little bit of a, crazy factor, but also crazy wins too sometimes. I always say you need one crazy person in the locker room, but no more than that either. I would just be curious. He does play, to be clear too, for the audience, he does run very much like a pro-level offense. He, as much as you can in the college game, he's very creative on the court in his sets. Like I still remember one of the Horns actions that they ran that set up several players to get wide open throughout the national championship game. So I think he got a lot of new believers just, again, by this postseason run. I just wonder how LeBron feels about all this, because that's what matters right now in this moment if you're the Lakers.
Yeah, could not agree more. The true serum on that end. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, Scott Agnes from Fieldhouse Files with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. All right, shifting gears, more Pacers and Fever related. We saw a draft workout on Tuesday for the Pacers. We've yet to see anything else announced. That would be a third draft workout. Do you have any idea if Zach Edey will work out for the Pacers? I think I saw a private workout the Raptors he had. They pick at 19. Just kind of curious on the Edey front. Obviously, the Pacers don't have a pick until 36.
Yeah, I don't know for sure if he will. I tend to believe no chance. Pacers don't have a second-round pick, like you said. They are at 36, so there is that. Yet at the same time, I just don't think it's a fit either, right? They might, and I don't think he needs any quote-unquote courtesy workouts either. After a long college basketball season, they know exactly what he is. He's right up the street for Ryan Carr and his scouting team, so that's no challenge at all. And I just don't think the fit's there just based on how the Pacers want to play. They want to play fast, above the rim, up and down, whereas I think with Edey, you'd have to play a very specific way.
Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Files, joining us here on this Thursday on the Fannies on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Those 3 second-round picks, maybe it's just me, Scott, so I'm going to give you my opinion first. I just still think the Pacers are going to be aggressive. Maybe you can package those picks, and maybe it's those picks and something else to try to move up. I could totally be wrong. How do you think in a few weeks this draft plays out for the Pacers? What's the most likely scenario?
Yeah, I think the likely scenario is nothing major happens. They quietly go about their business, which, by the way, keep in mind the NBA draft this year for the first time is a 2-day draft. And so night one's the first round. So Pacer fans, if that's the case and they don't do anything, night one will be a little quiet and boring, I think, for Pacer fans. But then fireworks the next day, because not only does it start at 4 p.m., but the Pacers do have those 3 picks within, 15 spots right there. I just think where they're at right now, you're good. First of all, it's not a very good draft.
Right.
NBA people don't think. But second of all, you kind of are what you are outside of going out big game hunting as best you can. And so you're not going to give away assets for what is a mediocre draft seemingly, and you already have your young players in a rebuild more than anything. And so you want to save those assets. If anything, I could see them, defer a pick or try to trade it back to another year into a better draft or something like that. Because I don't think they need another young player to the mix. The question we probably might address is, all right, what's next for Jarris Walker? What's next for Ben Shepherd? And it's like, yeah, those are all among the many things that the coaching staff has to figure out with the front office.
You like the splitting up day one and day two. I thought day two being at 4 o'clock in the afternoon was a little odd, but I like the splitting up of day one and day two. I'm good with it. I got no problem with it.
Yeah, I do too, Andy, although I would have done it slightly different. I would have done it lottery, so 1 through 14, then break for the day, then go to day 2.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
That's juicy.
Here's why I say that. First of all, picks 1 through 14 should be highlighted more, should be highlighted longer, and there's a lot more nuance usually to get into, especially if there are a trade or something. Second of all, then once you get after all that, that's always the kind of questionable thing. By that point, every team kind of knows exactly what their board and what they want to do. And then I'd like a little bit more in-depth conversation about these type of conversations, right? Like, what should the Lakers do in the short term? What should they do in the long term? What's LeBron's contract status? Why is he going to opt out? Why is that good for business purposes? I would really try to make it as thorough program as possible in terms of that. And then, of course, you want to highlight each of the players' stories for a short time as well. The trouble is the second round obviously does not carry the interest or the weight as a second round. So I think breaking that off in its own day makes things more difficult. And then in terms you referenced the early time, that's because of what's going on across the world. I think later in the day in the TV schedule, I think there's a presidential debate potentially.
Oh boy.
And maybe something else. And so they just didn't want to overlap with all that, because normally the draft is a Thursday. This year it's a Wednesday and a Thursday.
You know who this is going to hurt the most, Scott? Sorry to interrupt, KB. It's going to hurt the most the college coaches that go there to see their guy get drafted just so they can get their mug on TV for a little while, like a John Calipari, so he can get his face on TV and get interviewed by ESPN. Having it how you said it or how they're going to do it, that's going to affect the college coach as much as anybody.
Yeah, that's true, too. The other thing is it's 2 different locations. They're moving it, after Barclays Center. I think it goes to ESPN's Bristol studios, and it's much more limited media coverage the second day. On top of that, this other thing, obviously, I'm interested in because it directly impacts us is for a team having first-round picks, are they still doing their formal introductions in the city the next day, or will that wait till the next day on that Friday, right? Now, the Pacers don't have a first-round pick this year, but normally – then a private jet brings the first-round pick or picks the very next day from New York. And so if there's a whole nother draft to get to and all that, obviously that's what has to be how the front office will have to spend its time the next day and not, having a big draft party and things like that. So it might delay the first-round pick's arrival.
Scott Agnes with us here, Fieldhouse Files. I guess one more on the draft front, Scott. You hear all this, it's a bad draft. Is it bad throughout, or is it just bad at the top?
What most people talk about is you can just take a flyer at 1 through 10, for example, there's just no clear cut. Like, for example, in both the NBA and WNBA this past year, it was a clear cut favorite for a year plus, right, with Victor Wembanyama and then Caitlin Clark. That's not the case here. I think it's almost one of those situations where you don't want the top pick or 2. Just because of all that. And then outside, what I am curious, and I haven't got clarity on, is then after that, is there going to be quote-unquote steals that the late 20s or anything like that that would be intriguing of note for teams to jump back in, or is the overriding belief that, there's just not a big talent factor? That's why, for example, Bronny James took a lot of headlines at the draft combine. I mean, what do you remember, if anything, coming out of the draft combine outside of Bronny James? Because as someone who, for the first time in like a decade, did not cover it, I don't remember anything else coming out nationally.
The only thing I remember was Zach Edey running, doing his sprint down the floor and looking like the guy that chased Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore. That's the only thing I remember other than Bronny James jumping.
Yeah, that was it. And that I think more than anything perhaps speaks to this draft and that draft coverage as well.
Scott, I don't know if anyone cares, and maybe it's a stupid question, but I am kind of, I don't know, this is probably the nerd in me more than anything. It seems like over the last couple of years, it has shifted from like Kevin Pritchard is going to talk when regards to big moves and the end of season press conferences and all that. And now it's like always Chad Buchanan. Really like listening to Chad. Frankly, I like listening to Kevin as well. Is there any reason why like it has shifted a little bit from like the off-season voice, if you will, is Chad Buchanan, even though you still hear references to Kevin and roster building with him?
Yeah, no specific reason. I think in this instance, I did take notice that I was having that conversation with someone about that a couple of days ago, how at the beginning of the season in the Courtside Club, we talked with Chad Buchanan after the trade deadline. It was Chad Buchanan in the interview room, and then he held exit interviews as well. So,
and it didn't used to be that way, I guess, is why I'm bringing it up. Like, it used to be Kevin, right?
For sure. And one thing I believe Kevin liked to do was not always be the one to talk, to give him those opportunities, to give him those reps he wanted to groom him to be the guy eventually. And for Chad to be able to get, because otherwise, if you become the head guy, you haven't had those reps along all those years. But you're right. That was a astute observation. It's been all Chad this season.
Scott Agnes with us here, Fieldhouse Files. Just to kind of group two things together that we've been talking about the last week or so, and even yesterday. Andrew Nembhard. You give him an extension now. What do you think the future is with him? Is he a starter? Is he a 1? Is he a 2? Kind of what is he? And then yesterday, I talked a lot about Benedict Mathurin. The Pacers ultimately want Mathurin to be what? I think those, to me, are two interesting storylines. The maturation, and is Mathurin going to get it? And then how much the Pacers value and potentially give a contract extension to Andrew Nembhard this offseason.
Yeah, those are two massive questions, and in the same light, they kind of overlap each other, right? A little bit right now in the same draft class now, because Tyrese is your number one. He's getting the largest contract ever signed in Pacers franchise history at $245 million. But the interesting thing was, going into this past season, Andrew spent his offseason preparing himself to be the backup point guard, to handle those more responsibilities he was looking forward to. We even saw him in Summer League last year, if you remember, handling the ball, and that was kind of the first step towards what he expected his role to be, and taking more command of the team. But then things just changed as they got into the season, just like they did with T.J. McConnell, going from out of the rotation to kind of the backup point guard spot. Pacers like both players a ton. I'm just thinking it's going to be very difficult, I feel like, to move Andrew Nembhard now to a bench role after not only what he did during the regular season, but especially in the playoffs, especially at both ends. And right now he's still one of your top two defenders out on the floor, depending on him and Aaron Nesmith. So then where does Mathurin fit in? And right now, where I kind of have Mathurin is slated to come off the bench with McConnell. And eventually you'd hope that'd be with Jarris Walker as well. And that'd be a fun, young, energetic, fiery group. But you asked about Nembhard's extension. Yeah, he will become extension eligible. Not immediately. It's not like Pascal Siakam, who could agree to a contract the day after the NBA Finals. His would have to wait a little bit while. But he and his agents will have to weigh the thought of, do you want to get to free agency and get to the open market and also maybe see what your role is next year? Or the old question is it much better to have that guarantee? Do you want to have the bag in hand? You're a little older because he played all 4 years of college. Does he just want to make sure he has that contract? And he's planning to play with Team Canada this offseason in the Olympics as well. Now, it's not official, I don't think, on the roster, but I think those are his intentions. And just yesterday, his dad, which is pretty cool, is named, I think, the CEO of Ontario basketball. So he's very much involved in what's happening up north at Toronto basketball. And then in terms of Mathurin, you need him to have a healthy offseason. You need for him to come back and to kind of go or reiterate the words that Rick Carlisle has said many times this season is be part of what this team is doing, to be part and do exactly what this team is executing. And why I say that is because what he has been so used to being was the best player on the floor who could do whatever, who could put his head down, go right to the basket and either get in a basket or a layup, right? We saw that almost successfully a lot his rookie year. But now they much more want him to play within the read, react, and then also, much like Tyrese, take some pride in what you're doing defensively. Because if he started doing that, I think he has so much more potential in his game than what we could see.
Scott, we'll end with this. On or off the court, or both, how would you assess the pulse of the Fever yesterday after you attending their practice?
Yeah, I would say it was upbeat. I would say they were grateful for 2 days off after this awful schedule by the WNBA that you really can't understand, but then you really can when they're trying to get the most out of Caitlin in terms of TV numbers. And, I mean, it's fascinating that already they're 11 games in and playing on at least 6 different networks. I think all of them have set new records for their most viewed WNBA game of all time. And ESPN added another Fever game already for this month. And by the way, it's a rematch against the Chicago Sky, but not the first one. They play them twice over the next couple of weeks. But I would say upbeat. I love the fact that they went to a team dinner, KB, a couple nights ago. And Caitlin was like, yeah, those are the things you like to have early on in the season. And that was really our first one. So for the fans that might be like, what's going on? Why are all these losses? Well, there's scheduling. There's no practice time. In those team dinners that we often talk about with the Pacers and NBA teams that start in the preseason and training camp, those were just not afforded to this team. So that's a positive. And then the other thing, KB, was it was good to see the fact that Caitlin and Aaliyah Boston were on the court. They both exited the game on Sunday in New York with injuries. With Caitlin, it's an ear thing, and she says she's doing better. Still doesn't hear 100% correctly. And then secondly, Aaliyah tweaked an ankle, but both of them we saw out on the court for the final at least 10 minutes of practice running up and down. So it doesn't seem to be any concerns there.
Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Files. He is a busy man this time of year. Scott, thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Scott Agnes right there.
I'm smiling because now everyone's going to be going after the ear of Caitlin Clark. And all the people are going to tell us, this has happened for years in the WNBA.
Well, that's why you got the congressman to defend her.
That's why we do that.
Jim Banks, right?
Oh, yeah, Jimmy Banks, Jimmy B. He's to the rescue. Let's take a break. Coming up in 10 minutes, Joel A. Erickson. We'll talk with him. It's a Thursday. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Hey, J&V here, and summertime is for...
in a few. We'll get his thoughts on what he observed Anthony Richardson related yesterday in a limited work day for number 5. We'll do that here in a few. You happen to see the Flory Badunga show last night, Andy?
I did see a little bit of that. Yeah, it's he looks different on the floor. Throw it into the big guy, doesn't he?
Yeah, senior junior all-star game. Remember, we had Greg Rakestraw on last Friday. I mean, he spoke to it, and obviously it's still very true. The juniors are loaded. I mean, tons and tons of national talent. Senior class, you wouldn't say the same about that, but Mr. Badunga at Kokomo last night in what I would assume is his final game in Memorial Gym, 34 and 22.
In a high school game.
34 points, 22 rebounds. The seniors beat the juniors 104-96. Jack Benter heading off to Purdue, 5 threes, 19 points there. So I'm going to try have Kyle Nedrip on tomorrow. Again, this is Indiana-Kentucky All-Star Weekend. Nothing says Kentucky cares about it like hosting it at Lexington Catholic.
Oh, yeah?
And nothing says Indiana cares about it like hosting it at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
That's so true. Indiana does care more about it, but Indiana has way more talent than Kentucky does. Just straight up. It's not close, right? It's just not close. We were talking about that off air. I'm like, it's not. They care about it more.
Occurrence.
Annually, they care about it more.
I'm almost like waiting for the press release of like, this thing is done, which again, I know it's got great history.
I know.
But I don't know. Can you figure it out? Maybe a little bit more of a.
It used to matter a lot more.
Yeah, a little bit more of a competitive scale.
Yeah. Joel A. Erickson, Colts conversation. What did he see with Anthony Richardson? What did he think of the words of Michael Pittman Jr. in his contract? We'll find out. We'll do it next year on this Thursday. 9 o'clock hour. It's coming up. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with
I would like to think this is some walk-up music for Joel A. Erickson getting in the batter's box. I find it very fitting.
I'm trying to, I don't know. We'll ask him. I don't know what Joel likes in music.
Do you think
and looking at him, I can't tell what he likes in music.
Would he have joined you up in Detroit this past weekend?
No, probably not. No.
Now,
he's a sane man.
Let Joel know what music festival or the type of music festival you were attending, and we'll see if he would have joined you.
Well, I mean, it's hard rock. You could say it's heavy metal. It's called Tied Down, which is a scary thing. So yeah, we'll see if he likes that. But I would imagine that's probably not going to be something he'd want to do. Is be in a big room with a bunch of sweaty metalheads for 2 days.
Joel, how does that sound for a weekend?
Yeah, that's not really my scene. Gotta be honest.
Wait! This is Detroit, Joel. I mean, you don't want to go to Detroit?
It's a beautiful city. Come on, it's a beautiful city.
Joel hates Jacksonville, by the way.
I do need to check out the Tigers. I do need to check out the Tigers Stadium, but I don't know if I'm going for something like. I feel like when he says you could describe it as heavy metal, he's like trying to soft pedal that it's really, really hardcore.
I feel like the only Detroit compliment's like, yeah, I've heard their ballpark's pretty good.
I just would like to go to Detroit in one liquor store where it's not bulletproof glass. That's all I'm really asking in Detroit, you know? Come on.
Well, it might be some pristine liquor inside of there. Joel A. Erickson joins us here. I don't know, maybe Colts fans following on social media needed a little liquor yesterday in regards to what was happening with Anthony Richardson. Joel, I've described what I saw, and then we'll wait for, I guess, updates today, but your eyes are always very locked in. Paint the Richardson picture for what you observed yesterday.
Yeah, it was a little confusing because, he did play a little bit. And then he didn't, it wasn't like when Michael Pittman got hurt in the collision a couple weeks ago, he left the field, obviously. Richardson didn't leave the field. He stayed engaged. He was on it, but obviously he wasn't throwing. They were looking, trainers were looking at him. It's the second day in a row that they've done that. On Tuesday, it was, they got a foam roller for his back, and My general thought is it's generally good when a player doesn't leave the field, even if they're hurt for a practice. But I'm still very interested to see, what Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson say today when we get a chance to talk to them.
Joel, I was curious walking out there if he would practice, and I don't want to act like I'm super alarmed, but like you said, he got his back rolled out. Foam roller, any sort of, nagging thing in the spring, guys just sit out that day. And it was interesting, like when we walked out to practice, Shane Steichen was going over something with Anthony Richardson during stretching. I'm like, could they be going over the practice plan? Like, hey, we're going to put Flacco in here and, you're going to sit out here. Like, again, we'll ask Steichen and Richardson that here coming up in a bit, but I didn't get that inkling. Like, it was part of the plan necessarily. To me, it looked like, and again, these are my eyes, it looked like something occurred during practice to where that limited his workload. Not predetermined, I guess.
Yeah. Especially since he did, like, both of the periods that I remember him being in were early, and then he didn't really do anything later than that. I would think if you were just trying to limit his throws a little bit, maybe you spread it out a little more. I mean, I don't know. But that's what I would have thought. So I do think there's something there. There's also the piece that I think several people have highlighted this quote. But when the first time we talked to Anthony Richardson, he said there are days that he wakes up and his shoulder is still a little achy.
Yeah, we played that clip earlier.
There's also a piece of me that wonders, was this one of those days? Was this something that he maybe he's had them and we haven't seen it, and maybe it's part of the normal recovery. We'll find out. It made the final day of minicamp much more interesting than it typically is.
Joel A. Erickson with us. He's from the Star, following the Colts for them, and he joins us here on this Thursday on the Payless Liquors hotline. I guess last thing on Anthony Richardson for me, I have said repeatedly on the show today, Joel, that I'm not overrating this story. I'm not losing my mind. It's June, like you said. He is coming off that injury, but I'm also not underrating the story. I mean, back-to-back days, he's been looked at. That's not something that I guess you could say is quote-unquote normal. And then we know just how much he means to this team and this roster and Chris Ballard and the future there. And, if this team's going to get back to the postseason and everything else. Is that the right way to look at it, not to underrate it, not to overrate it? Or do you view this as, hey, this is more than that? This is more than something to watch? Or, hey, chill, it's only June. We still have a lot of time before we get to the actual season.
I think I'm still kind of in. Let's wait and see where this is. What they say about it. What it is. Not that necessarily is. Not that they're necessarily going to tell us everything that they're thinking on it. But there's also a piece of me that's just like kind of what Kevin already said. In the spring, if a player has any kind of anything, they're going to try to limit the workload, and so you try to figure out, when is it serious, when is it not serious? Because sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes what's coming out, or sometimes it's they're dealing with this injury and it's this body part, and it seems like it's not a big deal, then it turns into a big deal. Like Jelani Wood's hamstring would be a good example from last year. So I'm kind of in wait and see mode. I don't know much about shoulder recoveries. In terms of, I think Colts fans probably have a negative opinion with shoulder recoveries
Sure.
and more history than I do. But I don't have a ton of history with it to know, was it just an achy day? What does that mean? Like, I feel like they'd get him off the field if they were concerned it was something serious, but who knows?
Joel A. Erickson from the Star not going to road trip with Andy Sweeney up to Detroit, it sounds like, next summer. He is with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Joel, as we exit the spring, position battle you have the most clarity on, or I should say got more clarity on, and the position battle you have yet to get clarity on?
More clarity, I would say. I kind of feel like Jalen Jones and Juju Brents maybe have a little bit of a step ahead in the cornerback battle. And that might have to do with recovery, but Flowers has been at practice a lot. I just kind of feel like those guys have been out there quite a bit, which, I mean, in general makes sense. Flowers ended up only playing 4 games. I think obviously he's a guy who's got a lot of upside and stuff, but for all of his, for as much as Ron Miles likes him, the Colts cornerbacks coach, and him ending camp as a starter last year, it's still just 4 games as a starter. So that kind of makes sense to me. I think the free safety position, if you asked me who the leader was, I might lean Nick Cross, but that might be heavily influenced by the interception he made yesterday. I think they've kind of gone back and forth there. And it's really going to be, I think, a pretty interesting thing to watch at training camp.
Joel, yesterday we talked about about A.D. Mitchell. He had a couple red zone touchdowns. So we talked about Mitchell v. Alec Pierce, and it sure sounded like Alec Pierce, he knows that there's a lot of competition there in that wide receiving room, and that's great for everybody. What have you seen early on here? I know just a couple days from A.D. Mitchell, and how would you handicap the wide receiver room with Mitchell v. Pierce, kind of that battle as we go through the summer and then obviously into training camp?
Well, I think that one of the things that does stick out is that Mitchell, especially on routes where he's got to make a hard break, you do kind of see that separation. You do see that separation that they talked about at the top of the route. That was kind of the thing that Shane Steichen always came back to after they drafted him. He does have a way of creating a lot of space at the top of that. In terms of how I see it in the receiver room, like, I think I always feel like Colts fans, to a lot of Colts fans, if a receiver doesn't have 120 catches for 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns, they've been a disappointment somehow. And I don't necessarily think you're going to get that from either of those players, because I think the high volume guys in this offense are probably Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs. I think they're going to have the high reception numbers, and Mitchell and Pierce are going to be playing different roles, but sort of aimed at the same thing, where those are the guys creating explosives, whether it's Mitchell separating on a route at the 15 to 20 yard range and kind of getting open that way, or if it's Pierce going deep. I think both of them are going to be playing. It's not really a complementary role. It's a specific thing, but I think both of them are going to play more big play roles and sort of the high volume that like it just in general in my time here, fans sort of latch onto as whether or not a player is great or not.
And Joel A. Erickson from the Indianapolis Star, he's with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Him and Nate Atkins, great work on that Cover 2 podcast. You certainly should give that a listen. I might be reading too much into it, Joel, but we've had 2 drafts now in the Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard era. You go back to last year, I think 4 of the first 5 picks were on the offensive side of the ball. This year, of course, you had Latu at 15 overall, but then 3 of the 4 first 4 picks were offensively. Do you read anything into that? Like Shane Steichen is having more influence here, or do you simply just read, no, the offense need to be retooled more than the defense?
I don't necessarily. It's tough because I don't necessarily think that the offense need to be retooled more than defense. Just with what they've got, some of the stuff at secondary. You know, they could have picked a corner this year, but at the same time, generally, this team has done a better job of developing later round picks into, you know, big time players on the defensive side of the ball. You know, Grover Stewart's a 4th rounder, Zaire Franklin obviously a 7th rounder, EJ Speed a 5th rounder. There's a lot more guys on that side of the ball who've taken a leap. It feels like than you get at, say, the offensive skill positions, where a lot of those, you know, day 3 wide receivers have not necessarily turned out. Day 3 running backs that, you know, they've played backup roles, that kind of thing, but not necessarily played huge roles. I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, they've done a better job developing on defense so far.
Joel A. Erickson with us from the Star. He joins us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. A couple days ago, if I'm not mistaken, Joel, you were the one that asked Shane Steichen about Justin Jefferson. Adam Schefter had the conversation on his podcast. If people don't remember, we talked about it. The Colts were one of the teams that at least made the call for Justin Jefferson. The Vikings were never moving him. But what do you make of that entire situation of the Colts at least calling? Obviously, Justin Jefferson signs the big deal there back with Minnesota, but what did you make of the news that the Colts at least made that call for JJ?
Well, you know, one of the things I always say is whenever somebody reports the Colts are interested, you have to ask the question at what level, and you might not get an answer, but usually the Colts are interested at Chris Ballard's price point. So that's the first caution I would throw out there. I think the other piece is, and you guys can you know, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I didn't hear Schefter's comments, but I don't know when the request was made, but we've kind of known that the Colts were in the market for a receiver who could get them to the next level, and the best evidence for that is that they tried to trade up in the first round of the draft. You know, we saw it. Chris Ballard said it after the draft, and then we obviously have the clip backing it up of Ballard say we're going to be aggressive tonight, and if it doesn't happen, you know, we'll let the board play out. So I think if you look at the guys that came off the board in the top, you know, 12 to 14 picks, it always felt to me like the target was a receiver. That you know, Ballard hasn't said that, he hasn't given it up, but obviously they have a quarterback, they have tackles. And Bowers went a couple picks in front of him where I think they were trying to jump up further than that. So all that to me points to wide receiver, which then when you think about it that way, then the Jefferson interest makes a lot of sense.
Joel A. Erickson from the Star again. Final day of Colts minicamp. Oftentimes coaches say, yep, we've had enough. We're canceling. Let's all go bowling or paintballing or whatever. A little bit more newsy apparently for the Colts here later this morning. Joel, we will see you in a bit. Thank you as always, man.
Yep, see you in a bit.
Joel Erickson right there, Indianapolis Star. Safety or corner If I said it's July 24th, more likely to get attention between now and July 24th.
I think corner gets more attention, but I agree with you that I think safety is probably the bigger need. Don't you feel that way?
Why'd you go corner?
I think corner gets more attention just because it's viewed as a more important position. Don't you agree? I mean, they're the ones that at times are on an island against some of these wide receivers. I mean, you start being beat down the field, you blame the safety a lot less than you blame the cornerback, right? I mean, don't you feel that way? Plus, if Juju Brents doesn't kind of blossom, then you would go into next year, like 3 years in, with him not blossoming into what you would hope would be, your number one cornerback. I mean, don't you kind of feel that way? I guess that's how I feel. I mean, there's, the Colts haven't made a move, and I had this marked, but I can't find it now. I mean, there's still several veteran safeties that are out there.
Yeah, Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs.
Micah Hyde, like guys that you don't have to sign right now. Now, which one of those guys are kind of washed up, right? I mean, that is a valid concern, but I still think somewhere they may add somebody, but there's no hurry to do so. You can wait until you get into camp. A lot of these guys are going to be available, but I think they probably make a move. I just think the corner, that position is always going to be talked about more than safety.
Again, practice in about 2 hours for the Colts. It's an earlier practice today. As I said right there, typically this is a shorter, hey, let's bring Tanner Bordolini out to catch a punt, and we'll end practice early.
You don't think he'll get any of that?
That sort of feel to it. I don't really know, honestly. The Colts they dialed back their spring offseason program by a week, I think, to begin with. So, they've already abbreviated it. Maybe they won't do that anymore.
Well, I think the Colts should bring out the media and have them field a punt.
Well,
get you and Joel out there, see who can field a punt.
Yeah.
Any chance you could catch a ball on a 52-yard punt?
I'll probably hide behind the tree and, be in the shade. I probably not, judging by how I've seen that happen at Colts games. I feel like they've brought fans on the field.
Don't they do that?
Yeah.
Remember when Johnny Knoxville on the show Jackass returned a punt against the Tennessee football team, the Tennessee Vols?
Wait,
remember?
Did he really?
Yeah. They put him out there in a practice. Oh, yeah, I can look it up. I mean, this is that show's so old. It's like 15-plus years ago.
Show.
Oh, yeah. It was right in my heyday. Yeah, he was catching a ball and then just being absolutely creamed by, 250-pound guys. That's great.
Mapping out the next 20 minutes or so. Again, pop quiz in about 10. 317-239-1070 for that. 4-pack of tickets to the U.S. Swim Trials, and very fittingly, we will get educated on that from Sarah Meyer from the Indiana Sports Corps. She is certainly the head liaison, spearheading so much of the effort and knows a ton about what exactly is taking place inside of Lucas Oil Stadium starting on a week from Saturday for 9 days. Again, I know a lot of people saw the pictures and the time lapse making the social media rounds yesterday. Really, really cool looking aspect to what I think is one of the more unique events, frankly, we've ever hosted here in Indianapolis, which is saying something. So looking forward to that conversation. Obviously, Andy, the big news item today has been this reported targeting from the Lakers towards Dan Hurley and the pursuit of him, not J.J. Redick, Dan Hurley, to become the next coach of the Lakers. Adrian Wojnarowski dropped that bomb just before the show started. Do you compare any of this to a decade ago and Brad Stevens? If I'm not mistaken, I think that was early July. So the reason I bring that up is, and again, UConn is on a different pedestal than Butler, but the brands, Boston, LA, the timing of it, the out of the blue nature of it. Any sort of comparing?
Probably a little bit. I don't know. Do you almost compare it a little bit more to Billy Donovan? Just because of the success at college, winning of the 2 titles.
More there. And again, college athletics, where it was a decade ago to where it is now, is like, I don't know, describing society where it was in 1776 versus where it is in 2024. So it's probably not much of a comparison, but I just
yeah. But I mean, think about this as well. What's that contract going to look like? It's going to be fascinating because didn't UConn go up and over? They went to like $10 million, I think, in this contract extension. I know Kentucky was going, rather blank check. I mean, they were going big-time money at Dan Hurley, as anybody would. So everyone, I'm seeing on Twitter this morning, wow, you go to the NBA because of the money. I'm like, do you guys not understand how much these college basketball coaches make at the very highest level? Hell, even the mid-level. We have mid-level coaches making more than $4 million in college basketball. So, like, for me, I'm interested exactly what they're going to offer Hurley. And then we talked about it. You know, he's a crazy man. Hurley's a crazy man. How is that going to work? Someone put a meme out as well, and I don't know what game this is from. I mean, there are two teams that I have no idea, and there's no one in the stands, of two referees hugging each other. And it's like, that's going to be the college basketball official once Dan Hurley is gone. Because he is a crazy guy. I mean,
college basketball needs him more than the NBA needs him.
I totally agree. He is crushing refs. He's battling fans. He is also kind of thin-skinned, which is, you know, why he wants to get some fans thrown out of games and everything else. But, I mean, this would be a monumental move. And then the last thing for me on all of it would be, hey, what does LeBron think? In other words, are the Lakers clearing everything through LeBron? In other words, we are going to suck up to LeBron for these final couple years. We'll draft Bronny James. You know, we don't mind doing that. We'll continue to build the team with LeBron, you know, kind of having final say and everything else. Or is this a non-LeBron move? Is this a, hey, LeBron, you're not going to be here long term. We are down to the final season or two of you being an LA Laker. Who knows? It could even be sooner than that. We need to, yes, think about you and win now, but we also need to have something that's ready for the future. And Hurley obviously has built programs along the way when you look at what he's done in college and especially at the top with UConn. So I don't know, man. I mean, it's going from, you know, UConn, he won the championships, but was on Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. Now you're at the Lakers. I mean, now these games, you're going to be front and center, and it's the NBA. And can he, you know, the 6-7 month grueling season that is the NBA, is that something he can do? I have no idea. And then where do they go? Where does UConn go? You know, their players would have a 30-day window to move on. Liam McNeely just committed there, what, a month and a half ago? Whatever it was, the kid that was formerly committed, the five-star to Indiana. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where he goes. I know everyone wanted, I know Kansas wanted 50% him.
50% of deals from other Bears for the next week goes to Liam McNeely.
I know Cal went after him at Arkansas. I know Kentucky went after him. I know Kansas was very much thought because of the Adidas relationship. You know, when you look at Indiana and then Kansas being two of the big dogs there with Adidas men's basketball. So where do they go? You know, you bring in somebody else. If you're UConn, kind of the chain reaction here, where can they go? Are they going to do? I mean, Villanova lost Jay Wright and they went to one of his former assistants, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, who only had 1 year of experience. So this would be a monumental move, not only for the NBA, it'd be a monumental move for what does it mean for LeBron James, and then what does it mean for UConn, who gets that job, and then all those players could move elsewhere, and that could have a huge shift in talent in college basketball. So this is a big deal this morning. It really is.
All right, let's check it down.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, so obviously we've talked a ton about Woj, the Woj bomb, the Lakers, Hurley, and everything else. Let me give you one more piece of sound from the Colts yesterday. Michael Pittman Jr. meeting with the media. We've heard him talk about his contract, did not be motivated by money, and other wide receivers making perhaps more than him. He also has been praising A.D. Mitchell. He did so a couple different times yesterday, and here's one of those times.
He's such a funny guy, but he's all about football. I mean, like we're like always talking about concepts. We're always talking about routes, releases, setup moves. I mean, like he's all ball, like 24/7.
Final practice for the Colts later this morning. Obviously, some news items to get to on that end. All right, baseball-wise, yesterday, boy, the Paul Skeens, Shohei Ohtani back and forth was tremendous. For those that missed it, Skeens strikes out Ohtani, 3 fastballs in the first inning. Ohtani comes up in the third, and like any great hitter, he responds by working the count, and sure enough, he's seen fastball after fastball after fastball. And with that full count, he takes 1 yard, 2-run homer. It's kind of a cool moment there. I don't know if you get a lot of these in the regular season, but pretty special to watch those two go back and forth. The Pirates did beat the Dodgers yesterday. Paul Skeens, 3 runs allowed in 5 innings, 8 strikeouts, and a walk. The Reds are unreal. They continue to win, and the Cubs continue to survive against the White Sox. And the Indians won a game, right?
The Cardinals won a game. The Indianapolis Indians won a game. Everything went well last night, did it not? Come on. It's a good night around here. It's a good night in local MLB baseball.
NBA Finals Game 1, 8:30 tonight. Boston favored by 6. You have said Dallas, right, is your series pick?
I'm going to take Dallas in 7 games, and I think Dallas wins tonight. I think they get one in Boston.
I'll stick with the Eastern Conference. Again, a wild stat, just the 3rd time since 2000. The Eastern representative is the favorite. You got to go back to LeBron, Miami teams for the last time. It has been the flip on that. Anything else on your end?
No, but just think of Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd went from spilling a drink on the court on purpose with the Nets to being 4 games away from winning the NBA championship in just a couple of years. It's not too bad. I mean, we all laughed at Jason Kidd.
He was on the hot seat at the start of the year.
Of course he was on the hot seat. So, NBA Finals tonight, 8:30 on ABC. Let's take a break on the other end. It's your pop quiz, 239-1070. Load them up, that 4-pack of U.S. swim trials. You can also win, of course, the oil change. We got you set. 239-1070 pop quiz coming up next.
Want to explore using Mitsubishi?
Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
All right, Substitute Teacher Week continues on the Pop Quiz. That means easier pop quizzes, to be very clear on that end.
Supposedly.
Which I feel like
yesterday wasn't good.
The results have been a little mixed here this week. Again, 4-pack of tickets to the U.S. Swim Trials. We'll get more educated on that with Sarah Meyer from the Sports Core coming up on the other side. Looking forward to that conversation. Andy Sweeney, number 1 through 8.
Let's go fast fingers today. Let's go caller number 1, Corbin. Who do we have?
We have Bailey.
Bailey.
Good morning,
Bailey.
Morning.
How we doing?
I'm doing good, KB. I was DMing you the other day about this, and he picked me today.
Bailey. Yes. All right, fill our audience in on your swimming connection. This is when you first told me this, I thought you were lying. I'll be honest. That is probably the skeptic in me. Nothing against your integrity, but fill us in on your Olympic swimming connection.
Well, my wife, she is from Cyprus. She swam in Rio, representing Cyprus. She swam the 100-meter butterfly, an insane event to even swim in the first place. Representing Cyprus at the age of 18, she went straight to Rio, and then a couple weeks later, she started her ventures in the U.S. Swimming at Indy. So it's pretty crazy.
How about that?
That's
right
awesome.
There?
Yeah, that's
18,
awesome.
Yeah, Andy Sweeney, 18 years old. What are you doing?
Not in the Olympics. I can tell you that.
How can we get alcohol for after prom? That's what we're thinking about here.
Having people buy us vodka.
Yeah, and she's swimming in the freaking Olympics. That is awesome. Well, I would say no one better deserves these tickets, so I'm glad that
she's gonna be so excited.
Great to hear. I'm glad that you called in, Bailey, and always appreciate your listenership. I'm feeling good about this one, Andy Sweeney.
All right,
shout out Andy Sweeney for picking number 1.
Yeah,
today.
well, there we go. Yes, it's all on me. Well, let's go, Bailey. Let's get you
for
at least
Cyprus, baby.
Yeah, let's get you an oil change along with those 4 tickets. All right, question.
Oh, I need one.
Question number 1, as do I. The Dallas Mavericks are back in the NBA Finals for the first time since 2011, when they, of course, beat the Miami Heat. Who was the leading scorer in the 2011 NBA Finals? Was it LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Dirk Nowitzki, or Chris Bosh?
So Dirk.
Tom Crean was a fan of this one, you said?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. You sure, Bailey? Give it another shot. Was not Dirk.
LeBron.
He was breaking up. I didn't hear him.
I didn't hear him. Again, Tom Crean, a big-time fan of this guy.
That's a hint that I don't know. Chris Bosh.
Number 2 here, the Celtics back in the NBA Finals. In the history of the Celtics, who of the following did not win a Finals MVP? No Finals MVP here. Kevin Garnett, John Havlicek, Larry Bird, or Paul Pierce?
A.
You going Garnett?
Yep.
Anything is possible. Question number 3. The New York Yankees lead the MLB with 7 straight wins. Who is second in consecutive wins right now in MLB? Dodgers, Reds, Angels, or Phillies?
I don't know if the Reds are winning.
Come on now.
Dodgers.
Come on now.
Or Reds. Go Reds.
There we go. It is. The answer is actually the Reds. They won 4 in a row. How about that?
We're starting to get
How about that?
We're 50 meters into the butterfly. We're starting to get a big turn here.
Yeah.
We got a little wind coming home. All right, Bailey, yesterday was the 10-year anniversary of the Cubs selecting Kyle Schwarber, obviously of Indiana University, in the Major League Baseball draft. What pick number was Schwarber? Was he 1, 2, 3, or 4?
MLB draft. 2.
Probably a hitter like this you would slot, in this spot of the order, wouldn't you? I know he's bad at a lot of different places, but with his power, you'd probably want him here.
Well, let's change 2. Let's go 4.
Oh, goodness. Last one. I would say.
I feel like Jim Banks, the congressman, with Caitlin Clark right now.
The answer's 4 there, but some people would say your best hitter does go 2. That's a baseball
I meant
nerd
your best
thing.
power hitter.
Power hitter, right? It's a baseball
that's what I
nerd
was
thing.
thinking.
Last one, Bailey. There's one winless team left in the WNBA. The Fever play them Friday, tomorrow. Who is that team? Is it Chicago Sky, Seattle
It's
Storm?
Washington.
There you
Look
go.
at
There's a
that.
man that's listened to the show a little
That's
bit.
how we close here in the 100-meter butterfly. The first one, boy, I got nervous there.
Yeah, I mean, the answer
I
is
thought we did a cannonball instead of dove in the pool.
The answer, who was the leading scorer back in the 2011 NBA Finals last time the Mavs were there? It was actually Dwayne Wade. He averaged 26.5 points per game. Dirk averaged 26 even per game. So maybe that was a little bit of a Scotty J question, but Dwayne Wade is the answer.
4 for 4 after that, right?
Yeah, did pretty good. Yeah, Kevin Garnett never won a Finals MVP. The Reds right now, second in Major League Baseball, consecutive wins with 4. Schwarber was picked 4th in that draft, 10 years ago in the MLB? And then the Washington Mystics still have not won a game.
Again, just to remind our audience out there, the Fever back in action tomorrow, again, against the Mystics. The Mystics play tonight. So if there was ever a get-right moment for the Fever, a week off, plus playing the winless Mystics off of back-to-back.
This is the time. Yeah.
You got to get it done.
Congratulations, Bailey. So at least you
That's
got
awesome.
those tickets. How did all of this happen with the U.S. swim trials? How much work went into it? Sarah Meyer joins us next here. It's a Thursday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Reliable internet.
Boy, hearing that music, I feel like Bob Costas is about ready to bring us back here.
Remember when he had the eye infection? He had pink eye on TV?
With old pink eye. Shout out to Bob. We had him on last year.
Oh, he's great.
He was outstanding guest. But no, we're going to get educated on the pools inside of Lucas Oil Stadium right now. Not only are we going to get educated, Andy Sweeney, I got to share with you, how's your ego? Does it need an ego boost right now? Because I have one for you.
Oh, okay. Well, mine's rather low for being in sports radio. Mine's glaringly low. So go ahead. But I could always use a boost.
Okay,
Sure.
Okay. Our next guest, Sarah Meyer, is going to join us here. And she texted me about 20 minutes ago. And I'll admit, when I saw her name pop up on my phone, I thought, oh, bleep. She's got to cancel. Important things.
She's busy.
She's busy. She's, going to educate us here. She's got to cancel. No. She goes this. If people ever tell you radio is dead, they're wrong. She goes, I've gotten so many texts about this call. How about that? Sarah Meyer with the ego boost on this Thursday morning.
It's the power of sports radio.
We don't even need to do the
about.
interview anymore. I feel like we're
done.
good, right? Sarah, thank you for that. Much needed here for us.
I'm just glad I could make your day, you guys.
Say no more. Add that to the LinkedIn resume.
Yeah, I feel like we should stop now while we're ahead.
Right there. In all seriousness, I was texting somebody about, again, the U.S. swim trials inside of Lucas Oil Stadium last week. I said, all right, I need education. Tell me who to go to. And they said, Sarah Meyer. She is the Chief of Staff and Strategy at the Sports Corps and the event co-director of the U.S. Olympic swim trials. And again, she's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Sarah, let's begin probably multiple years ago. When and how did this bid come about? And I guess what were the original thoughts when you were like, wait a minute, a pool inside of Lucas Oil Stadium?
Yeah, so it's really funny. In 2019, actually, the idea came up from USA Swimming, and they approached us about it just as an idea. And I remember thinking, oh, my God, is this actually going to be something we're going to do? And then in July of 2020, actually, they opened up the bid process. And, I mean, we all know where we were at in July of 2020. We didn't even know what the future of sporting events were. I mean, around that time, they had just, postponed the Olympics. And so it was just, what is going to happen? So it was just an awesome opportunity to be able to bid on something that you could kind of dream about and say, okay, well, 2024, we'll see what happens with live events by that time. So we bid on the event. I mean, we were, all at home in masks and started the bid process. And then probably about 8 or 9 months later, we were notified that we got the event.
Sarah Meyer with us. We're learning how they got all the pools in Lucas Oil. So how did all of this come about? All the engineers and all the thinking people, I would imagine, come together. Hey, here's how this could actually work. To me, Sarah, it's awesome, but it seems like it's just an absolute ton of work you guys have had to do.
Yeah, and we built a pool in the stadium in 2004. The former Conseco Fieldhouse, now Gainbridge, had the World Swimming Championships that year. So 20 years ago we did this, but obviously now we're in a football stadium. And it's pretty crazy because Dodd Technologies, who is building the deck and doing a ton of the game presentation around all of the events, they're an Indianapolis company. Spear, the pool company, they are an Indiana company, and then Murtha is actually an Italian company who builds pools like this all over the world. So all of these people came together. We also worked with Shield Sexton here locally. I mean, I think the big story here is Indiana showed up for this event. And then Eric Newberger, who's the manager at the stadium, he's a swimmer. He swam at IU, and so all the right people in all the right places, and what better time to do it than 2024 when we have had such an epic year here for sports.
Again, she is Sarah. Boy, ain't that the truth? She is Sarah Meyer, again, Chief of Staff and Strategy over at the Sports Corps, that outstanding organization. Again, spearheading this effort here, U.S. Olympic swim trials. We've been giving away tickets all week long. We'll continue to do so next week. Okay, the water comes from White River. Did I read that correctly? 2 million gallons?
Yes, and filtered first, my friends.
Yes,
so let's just say that.
Thank you for clarifying that, yes.
But yeah, it came from the White River, got filtered, put into the pools, and then when we will tear them down, it will go back to the White River. So people were wondering where all that water was going to go after. It will actually go back.
Okay, and then fan experience, when you walk into Lucas Oil, and I haven't been in there yet with this setup, it looks like to me similar to kind of the NBA All-Star setup, at least where the court was and where the pool is. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're spot on. So except giant pools, but
Sure.
the deck actually comes up about 12 rows. So we had to take out the first 12 rows. Obviously, people always ask me if we took out the turf. Yes, we did take out the turf. The Colts will get new turf actually for next season with this event. So deck is 12 rows up. The pool is about 9 feet deep all the way across, and then there is a massive warm-up pool on the other side, on the north side of the stadium. And that is a 50-meter and 25-meter pool kind of joined together.
How many athletes will be in town for this in total? Do you have a final number? Do you know?
So they actually can qualify through this weekend, and then they're done. But we have nearly 1,000 that will come, and there are only 52 spots on the team.
Wow.
So 26 male, 26 female, which is crazy. It's a really competitive event.
And this is nightly NBC, is that right?
Nightly on NBC. Yeah, people are like, is it Peacock or no?
Right.
Nightly on NBC. And there will be an Olympian named to Team USA every night. So it's not like something like a tournament, like a Final Four, where it's like there's the final night is the night and names the champions. There will be Olympians named every night, which is a really cool part of this. And then on June 23rd, they'll honor the entire team. And then on the morning of the 24th, they'll actually practice as a team in the pool, and then they'll fly out that afternoon.
Wow, that is all really, really cool. I had no idea all of those details on top of that. Sarah Meyer, again, with us, Chief of Staff and Strategy, Event Co-Director of the U.S. Olympic Trials. I'm looking forward to I think I'm going to do something related to an MC for one of your guys' concerts. Anything else related fan-wise?
How about that?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know, maybe the final Sunday. I got to check my schedule. But anything else, I guess, fan-wise that we are missing outside of, I mean, hell, I think it's just cool enough what you just said. But what are we missing from a fan standpoint?
Yeah, so free fan activations inside the convention center, the Toyota Aqua Zone, very family friendly, again, free for everyone. And then outside, what you'll be emceeing, USA Swimming Live presented by Purdue, and that will have live music every day, again, free and open to the public. We'll have a swim-up bar. We will have an Eiffel Tower. The 66-foot Eiffel Tower will be at the corner of Georgia and Capitol. So it is going to be an all-out party for 9 days. And we have not activated Georgia Street that long since the Super Bowl in 2012.
Time out. Go back to the swim-up bar. I don't know if anyone wants to see me participating in that, but tell us more.
You can't see me, but I'm doing finger quotes because the water part of it might be a little bit of turf, but it'll look like a swim-up bar.
Sure.
But it's going to be very cool. And we're hoping that people come down like in the afternoon after work during the week and then on the weekend. But it'll be a party from 1 to 7 every single day because the finals start at 8 o'clock every night at Lucas Oil. Really,
really great stuff here. Again, Sarah Meyer from the Sports Corps is with us. Obviously, you brought it up earlier where we were at in July of 2020. You and your staff were just embarking on, I think, one of the crazier endeavors ever, and that was the hosting of the NCAA tournament and the execution of that. I'm always reminded just how wild that was. And, I remember took our family over to a picnic at Butler, and there's, the Villanova basketball team, walking around, getting ready to play their Sweet 16 game at Hinkle. And just all of that was so surreal to me. An anecdote, anything. I know there's been documentaries made about it. What do you remember the most that maybe the common fan doesn't realize about what you guys executed and helped put on there for the NCAA tournament?
Oh, man. I think to do something at that scale in 70 days is just wild. I'm same as you. I will have moments still. It was 3 years ago where I just can't believe that we did it and only one team had to go home. When you're thinking about hosting 68 teams in one spot during a pandemic, it's just wild to me. And this community just absolutely showed up. So I think it's pretty amazing what Indianapolis can do and the firsts that Indianapolis has. No one ever did that. I don't think anyone ever will do that as far as the tournament goes. And then the first of having a pool in an NFL stadium, it's just wild to me what this community can do. So, lots of stories, lots of behind the scenes. The laundry is always my favorite. One of my favorite stories. We did 4 billion pounds of laundry or something. It was wild just because none of the teams could do it on site. So it was crazy, but just again, and those were all volunteers that showed up all those 17 days of playing. So it was just crazy how many people showed up to help out with that in such a wild time.
My sister-in-law texted me. She's a nurse, and she goes, I'm now cheering for BYU. I'm like, oh, really? Why? She's like, well, we just got done swabbing BYU's team, and they were the nicest team so far. So we are BYU fans from here. Sarah, we only have about a minute left. Can Sarah Meyer from Sports Core with us? Anytime we have a guest related to the Sports Core, just visit Indy, anything, I love to ask this question. You can snap your fingers and bring any sporting event to the city of Indianapolis. What would that be?
NFL draft.
Ooh.
I love it.
I might need to hear a little bit
Sarah,
more talking on
Sarah,
that
I
end. 'Cause
absolutely love that.
I'm not as gung-ho about the draft as you would think.
Yeah.
Now, where would we have it? Can we go there? Or IMS? We going on the Circle? We going Georgia Street?
Which are all thoughts of mine, trust me.
Okay.
But I feel like not only is it a great sporting event, it would be a great event for our city and our brand because it brings. I went to the one in Cleveland, and it brings fans from every city, and it's just a great way to show off what we can do. So I have a couple of different purposes for why I want the NFL draft, but I would love to host it.
Love it.
I look forward to that conversation down the road. Again, she is the Chief of Staff and Strategy, Event Co-Director for the Olympic Trials. She is Sarah Meyer. Sarah, thank you for the ego boost, and more importantly, thank you for the education on what I think is one of really the coolest events Indy has ever hosted.
Thanks for having me.
Sarah Meyer right there, Payless Liquors Hotline.
All right, so we only got about a minute left. I believe the concert you're going to be a part of, if it is that Sunday, the performer is still to be determined. The night before is Fastball. Do you remember Fastball?
No.
At all?
Should I?
1998, they had The Way, if you remember the hook. Anyone can see the road that they walk on is paved in gold.
Didn't have Andy Sweeney singing around out the show.
Remember that
song? Were they in
Detroit
this past weekend?
They were not. So that one's on June 21st, which I believe is a Friday night. So I don't know if you're doing that one, but I saw Fastball, though. There you go.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're going to ask me for musical advice or, let's get Eminem to close it out or something. Yeah. I'm a big Kesha fan. Maybe we can get
Kesha.
Yeah, to end it there.
Kesha.
That's a cool little anecdote she shared about an Olympian every night. I mean, that's, just to witness that, I think, in person will be awesome. So thank you to Sarah Meyer for hopping on with us.
Yeah, well, the podcast up 1075thefan.com. Jake and Jimmy at noon, JMV at 3. Have a good afternoon on The Fan.
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy.